Chapter 1. Jiang Pingji, General of the Federation, female, former commander of the 7th Army Corps. Why was there a prefix of former? Because she had died in battle. She clearly remembered that death had come very suddenly, and it had even caught her unprepared. However, there was also a benefit to this. At least before she could feel the pain of death, her consciousness had already been withdrawn from her body. There was a deafening roar in his ears as if his eardrums were about to burst. The world was dyed red. The next moment, the scenery in front of her turned into silent darkness, and an indescribable chill swept through her soul. Although it was a little regretful to die like this. However, for many warriors, dying so painlessly was also a blessing. However, as an atheist who had always advocated science, she had never thought that people could still feel after death. What she didn't know whether to laugh or cry was that the pain she hadn't experienced before her death was actually experienced after her death. An indescribable pain came from all over her body. She, who usually never frowned when she was injured, almost couldn't help but howl. It hurt, and it was the kind of pain that made her see stars. This kind of pain left a deep impression on her. It was as if she was forced into a small box and someone was constantly using external force to compress it inwards, reducing the space inside the box. Moreover, there seemed to be no end to this process. It was as if he would not be satisfied until he compressed her to the size of a palm. Suddenly, the bone-piercing pain seemed to have exceeded a certain extreme point, and something crashed into her head with a bang. Ouch! Jiang Pingji couldn't help but want to curl up. The pain in her head even overshadowed the pain in her limbs. She didn't have the slightest bit of rationality or time to think about other things. It was as if other than the pain of explosion and tearing, there was nothing else. Hot. She didn't know how long the intense pain lasted. She even suspected that she had gotten used to it. An indescribable heat completely surrounded her. She felt like she had fallen into a boundless sea of fire, and all the water in her body seemed to be evaporating. Where am I? As this command popped up in her brain, she desperately wanted to open her eyes and look at her surroundings. Could it be that she had fallen into hell? However, things didn't go as she wished. Her eyelids seemed to be filled with lead water. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't even open a crack. In a daze, as his consciousness drifted away, he heard an indistinct electronic voice. Ding! Palace Intrigue live streaming system is checking the host again. Scanning progress is 1%. The cold and hard electronic voice was getting closer and closer to her. Jiang Pingji subconsciously wanted to perk up her ears so that she could hear the song clearly. Scanning progress 23%, 27%, 36%, 42%, 51%. What is this thing? Jiang Pingji tried hard to gather her scattered consciousness and figure out who the owner of the voice was. However, the other party didn't seem to want to pay attention to it and continued broadcasting something. Beep, host's body scan completed, binding confirmed. Binding in progress. Further verification of host identity. Please wait. Verification in progress. Verification complete. Ding. A sharp voice sounded and Jiang Pingji broke out in a cold sweat. She felt as if her brain had been stuffed with a cloud of black fog. She wanted to think, but she couldn't think of anything. The strange electronic voice was still broadcasting at a steady pace. Name, Jiang Pingji. Gender, female. Age 41. Origin unknown, tentative. Specialties, wrestling, tentative. Analysis, tentative. Other abilities, tentative. Attributes, unknown, tentative. Jiang Pingji's consciousness became clearer when she heard her name and age. The voice in her ears didn't seem so ethereal anymore. Beginning soul fusion. Fusion rate 1%. Beep. Insufficient points. Final fusion rate 3%. System. Palace Intrigue live streaming attendant 007 is at your service. Jiang Pingji Lu Lanting. After that, the voice fell silent again. It was as if it had never been there. Before she could think further, something like a gust of wind brushed past her face, and her scattered senses gathered around her again. Vaguely, she felt as if the ground was shaking, and as time went by, the tremors grew stronger. Creak, creak, creak. She heard the sound of wood scraping against each other, followed by suppressed sobs. Someone's there? She tried to open her eyes, but the darkness in front of her slowly turned into a blur. However, it took too much energy, so she did not maintain it for long. Her eyelids closed again. Brother Lanting. Brother Lanting. Wake up, wake up. Look at me. Jiang Pingji thought it had nothing to do with her, but she did not expect the owner of the voice to be crying and shaking her shoulders. Her drowsy mind was on the verge of exploding. She said weakly, Don't shake me. My head is dizzy. It's so uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because her voice was so soft that only she could hear it, but the person who was crying and shaking her did not stop. Finally, Jiang Pingji raised her hands to brush away the sinful hands, but her arms weighed 1,000 pounds. Even moving a finger took all her energy. In the end, she simply gave up on this action. She adjusted her breathing while enduring the noisy sobbing in her ears. She could not stop or resist, so she could only endure it. Perhaps when she got used to it she would not feel so uncomfortable anymore. It was obvious that Jiang Pingji was not the only one who found the crying annoying. The other person even expressed his disgust. These stinky women only know how to cry. It's annoying to hear. Bah. Swallowing hard, the rough-looking man driving the cart raised his whip and lashed the horses hard. The mountain road was rugged and the carriage was on the verge of falling apart. His curses did not stop the crying in the carriage. Instead, it became louder because of fear. Annoyed, the rough man raised his whip and whipped the curtain of the carriage a few times. The string of beads and bells rang, and the noble lady inside was frightened. Cry again and I'll whip you to death. There was more than one carriage racing on the mountain road. There were 2 other carriages running behind and they were not far from each other. If the carriage was driven on an unfamiliar mountain road, it was very likely that the carriage would be destroyed and the passengers would die. However, the driver was familiar with the road and knew the mountain road like the back of his hand. Moreover, they were in a hurry, so the 3 luxurious carriages looked like they were racing. Chapter 2. That's right. She's pretty, so what if she's a little delicate? Go. As he spoke, the coachman on the other carriage lashed out at the horse's butt. A crude man who doesn't understand pity. If a young lady cries a little, that's also pretty. If it was him crying, I would have slapped him twice. To put it bluntly, this was also a world that valued appearances. No matter how a good-looking beauty cried, it was still a beautiful scene that was pleasing to the eye. If it wasn't good-looking, for example, a 7-foot-tall man who pretentiously wiped his tears and sobbed, who wouldn't want to slap him in the face? Who asked you to cry blindly? First master, what you say makes sense. Wasn't there someone who said that if he could hug a woman in each arm he would be dissolute even as a ghost? The burly man with a broadsword on his waist laughed. His voice was so loud that Jiang Pingji could hear it clearly. He said, "We brothers don't have to die and become ghosts. We can still have beauties in our arms and have fun day and night." As soon as he said this, the mountain path was instantly filled with the loud laughter of a few people. There was an indescribable pleasure, lust, and wickedness in it. This group of 7 burly men were all bandits living in the deep mountains near Hejian County. They had become bandits, robbing and committing all sorts of crimes. Someone said that a group of fairies had brought their maids and old women out for a stroll, and that there weren't many guards around them. Wasn't this because the heavens had sent a group of fairies to warm their beds because they were lonely at night? Of course, what shocked them even more was to come. These fairies were actually noble ladies of the gentry clans. Seeing the clan emblem on the carriage, these bandits felt their hearts tremble. Although beauty was attractive, they had to be alive to enjoy it. But when they thought of the high and mighty noble ladies who had to go pale and enjoy themselves under them, who wouldn't have the guts to do so? In the face of beauty and the temptation of profit, the group of ferocious bandits immediately raised the broadswords in their hands and finally reaped a great harvest. "Leader, why don't we just kill that sickly person inside and throw him out? It would be too unlucky if he died of illness on the way." The one who spoke was a crippled bandit. He pointed at the carriage and said, "He looks like a kid. He's much uglier than those girls." Inside the carriage sat 3 beautiful young girls dressed in silks and satins. They were all quite young, but they were all true beauties. There was also a young man in a green robe curled up in the carriage. The jade crown that bound his hair was gone, and his long black hair was scattered all over the ground. She was curled up in the carriage, unconscious from the heat. Taking a closer look, one could see that his eyes were handsome and his loose collar revealed a corner of his light yellow doo-doo. His chest was also slightly bulging. This was clearly a girl dressed as a man. The bearded first master laughed. "She's a female after all. Let's keep her. We still have our brothers in the village. How can there be enough women?" In the past we didn't even see a female mosquito. Apart from Lao Si, who else had a woman to warm the Kong? Jiang Pingji listened to the conversation outside the carriage and was shocked. Sister Jingxian. Brother Lanting still hasn't woken up. What should we do? Jiang Pingji could hear the girls sobbing. The voice was unfamiliar to her, but the other party's message automatically appeared in her mind. You're already a clay Buddha crossing the river. How can you care about others? Wei Jingxian pursed her pale lips and gripped her handkerchief tightly. Her knuckles were white and red. She snapped, "Mind your own business." Being scolded like that, the cat-like girl with red eyes lowered her head in fear. She did not dare to look Wei Jingxian in the eye. Everyone in Hejian County knew that the eldest daughter of the Wei family and the second son of the Lu family had been betrothed since they were young. However, how could the prideful Wei Jingxian maintain her composure when a childhood sweetheart turned into a childhood sweetheart who shared the same gender as her? If not for this incident, would she have to wait until the day of her wedding to find out that her husband was a girl? For Wei Jingxian, the humiliation that her fake husband brought her was probably worse than the unbridled laughter of the bandits outside. It was another unfamiliar girl's voice, but the other party's name still appeared in her mind. In a daze, Jiang Pingji thought that Wei Jingxian was her fiancé. Wait a minute. Her mind quivered and she almost jumped in fright. Fiancé? What the hell? Jiang Pingji was almost scared to death by the information that appeared in her mind. Since when did she have a fiancé? Jiang Pingji began to consciously comb through her thoughts. Finally, she found that there was a stranger's memory in her mind. The owner of the memory was a young man, or rather a girl dressed as a man. Her name was Lu Lanting. What was going on? Why did a stranger's memory appear in her mind? At this time, before she could think of a reason, the carriage that seemed to be falling apart finally stopped shaking. Stop. Come out, you stinky bitches. Don't make me treat you. The car marks were too obvious. Hejian County might be in chaos now that so many aristocratic ladies had been lost. To put it bluntly, Hejian County might be in chaos now. The bailiffs and servants could follow the carriage marks to find them. They wanted to live longer and they could not even leave footprints. Therefore, they had to change to another mode of transportation. Boss, why don't we enjoy two of them first? Looking at the beautiful noble ladies climbing down from the carriages one by one like quails, the bandits' eyes were glued to them. One of them licked his dry lips with his saliva, looking like a perverted hungry wolf with his eyes shining. Just the thought of having sex with one of the beauties was enough to make one's blood boil. The girl he had his eyes on was so ashamed that she wanted to die. She wanted to hide herself so that no one could find her. The bandit leader stopped in his tracks and patted his subordinate with his huge palm. What are you thinking about? Go back one by one and take your time. What's the point of playing now? Who knows, your captors will be here before you can even pull up your belt. With that, the bandit leader licked the blood at the corner of his mouth with a fierce look in his eyes. He looked at the noblewoman with an unfriendly gaze. Although it was easy, they had paid a price. There were more than 20 brothers who had come, but there were only 7 left. Since their boss had spoken, the bandits had no choice but to bear with it, but they could still take advantage of the situation. The crippled bandit carried the unconscious Jiang Pingji out of the carriage, cursing as he did so. No one knew that Lu Lanting, whose brain was about to explode, had quietly opened her eyes and then closed them again. System. Jiang Pingji called out in her heart and a clean, transparent panel appeared in front of her. Name: Lu Lanting, Lu Shi Lanting, also known as Lu Lanting. Base strength, 5. Strength fusion plus 30, gender: female disguised as a man replacing the deceased brother Lu Lanting, age 41, 12, born in the 3rd year of Tianwu's flower festival birth, the second son eldest, of the Lu family in Hejian County. Fiancé: Wei Jingxian, the second daughter of the Wei family in Hejian County. Specialty: 6 arts of rights, beginner, fighting expert, analysis, tentative, other abilities, tentative. Attributes: charm hidden 21, appearance 75. Channel: live stream, sufficient points yet to be unlocked. Streamer level 1. As a woman from the future who had come from the information age, Jiang Pingji did not pay much attention to entertainment, but she knew that there was something extraordinary in her mind. Chapter 3. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes. She had regained consciousness a long time ago, But she still couldn't control her limbs, which meant she couldn't use force to protect herself. After a brief observation of her surroundings, she decided to remain unconscious and secretly accumulate her strength. The system's voice was electronic and it spoke haltingly. "I am 007, your palace intrigue streaming attendant." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows discreetly. "There's another memory in my head that doesn't belong to me. Is that also your doing?" It would be strange if she felt good to find a stranger's memory in her head the moment she woke up. Memories were the most private of secrets. What was the difference between an outsider's interference and flirting with a virgin? The system was silent for a moment, then it answered dutifully, "Don't panic, host. That's the memory of the original owner of this body. For you, it's like a supplementary plugin for playing a game. It can help you quickly understand this era and integrate into it." No matter how unhappy she was, Jiang Pingji knew she couldn't just fall out with the system. "I remember that I'm already dead." She chose to change the topic. There were some things she had to clarify. From the commander of the 7th Army to a weak girl, she even accidentally entered an ancient world. Even if she had a strong heart, she still couldn't wrap her head around it. Was it that hard for her to just die? How crazy was the system? It didn't even let the dead go? It didn't respect the dead, hooked the souls of the dead and continued to whip and use them. Was the system out of its mind? Her impression of the ancient era was simple and crude, barbaric. The system seemed to know what Jiang Pingji was thinking, so it quickly explained, "Everything is just a coincidence. It's not what the host thinks." It didn't have the ability to hook anyone's soul as it pleased. If it wasn't for Jiang Pingji's strong soul and the fact that she happened to appear in the space crack, the system wouldn't have chosen her. It could only be said that everything was just a beautiful coincidence. Jiang Pingji's eyebrows twitched as she listened to the system. She felt uncomfortable that her secrets were being peeped at. "You said you're the system?" "Yes, its full name is Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. You're the only streamer I need to serve." The system replied in a businesslike manner. "As the host, your mission is to start a live broadcast. Broadcast how you became the queen of the world from an aristocratic family. Live stream, as an empress?" If she had not closed her eyes, Jiang Pingji would have widened her eyes in shock. What the hell was this? She had no interest in it at all. "That's it? Palace intrigue? Empress? Trash system, what use do I have for you?" The system seemed to have seen through everything. Seeing that Jiang Pingji looked down on it, it could not help but say proudly, "This is not an ordinary streaming system that deceives people but a dimension. Please pay attention to these two bolded words. This is very important. The audience watching the live stream won't be limited to a single dimension. As the host's level increases, he'll be able to unlock the right to live stream in other dimensions. For example, if the host can unlock the qualification to the cultivation dimension, if the audience there is satisfied, they can even reward you with elixirs, cultivation techniques, rare herbs, and even immortal demon beasts." Jiang Pingji thought about it. After weighing the pros and cons, she decisively chose to reject it. "I'm still not interested. Damn it, if the dimension where the live stream happened to be her old nest, the animals in the 7th Army would laugh at her for the rest of her life." The system was silent. It had never met a host who was so unmoved by force or persuasion. Or rather, a person with a hole in their brain. Was the information it threw out not tempting enough? Or was there something wrong with the host's IQ, and her language comprehension ability was deficient? It was said that it was a dimensional streaming system. This was equivalent to an alternative dimensional trading system. Through the reward from the audience, the host could obtain items from another dimension. The advantage of a small investment was that if it could connect to the cultivation dimension and receive elixirs, spiritual beasts, or cultivation techniques as rewards, the host could even become a cultivator. Perhaps he could even become immortal. This was a benefit that others might not be able to get even if they begged on their knees. After listening to it, which of the previous hosts did not have their eyes lit up? There was no need for it to urge them to start a live stream. They took the initiative to apply and worked diligently every day. It was extremely worry-free. It had been smooth sailing for so long, but it was the first time the system had encountered such an uncooperative thorn. The system felt wronged. It felt bitter in its heart, but it could not express its bitterness. Why couldn't it be given a worry-free host? However, the system was bound to Jiang Pingji. It could not be separated from her in a short period of time. Therefore, even if it was unwilling, it could only rely on her now. Even if it had to coax her and call her ancestor, it had to coax her to start a live stream. After thinking about it, the system analyzed many possibilities and finally picked out a strong temptation. If the host is willing to start a live stream, I can help you get out of your current predicament. Not only that, if your streamer level reaches the top, you will even have a chance to make a wish. Jiang Pingji snorted coldly. You're not bad. You can actually pinpoint my lifeline. I'm not interested in the second one, but the first one is a little interesting. Those bandits had a lot of human lives on their hands. If that group of beautiful girls entered the bandits' lair, their fates could be foreseen. The system was choked by her. According to a normal person's thinking, wouldn't they be more concerned about the second one? That was the benefit that was linked to its own interest. If Jiang Pingji could reach the top of the streamer level, she could easily make a wish to go back in time and change history. However, that was not the point. As long as it could coax Jiang Pingji to start a live stream, the other details could be discussed later. So the host agrees to start a live stream? Jiang Pingji urged in her heart. I agree, but there is a condition. I want to recover quickly. I need the host's help. As long as I start a live stream, even if there is only one audience, I will have spare energy to help you recover quickly. Since it was a palace intrigue live stream, the source of its power was naturally related to the live stream. In fact, in order to send Jiang Pingji to this fresh body, the system had used up all its energy. Without a live stream, there would be no popularity. As a live stream system, how was it different from a salted fish? However, that was not a problem. If one had to invest now, there would be more popularity in the live stream in the future. Jiang Pingji did not trust the strange system that appeared out of nowhere. She maintained a distant attitude towards it, but the only thing that could help her now was this strange system. She took a deep breath and secretly prayed that the live stream would not lead to her hometown. That would be so embarrassing. Chapter 4. Jiang Pingji did not agree to the system's request for herself. She was used to seeing blood on the battlefield and she no longer cared about life and death. The people who were supposed to be dead were still talking nonsense with the system. To her, every word she said was worth it. She did not mind dying, but she could not bear to see those beauties being humiliated. She had the ability to do so, but she did not save them. The system said, signing the host's contract. Searching for a connected dimension. Confirmed coordinates. Live broadcast begins. The transparent panel made a buzzing sound, and the loading button in the middle spun a few times. Suddenly, a full view of the live broadcast appeared. Through the screen, she saw her body being carried by a burly man and thrown to the ground with a thud. All the captured noble ladies were locked in this musty and smelly hut. After climbing a mountain for a while, these delicate noble ladies had suffered a lot. Now they lowered their heads in silence, listening to the bandits' obscene laughter. Everyone knew that once the bandits were done with them, they would not be able to escape the fate of being defiled. Jiang Pingji waited quietly minute by minute, until a line of white words with a question mark floated across the screen. Finally, an audience member. System. She gritted her teeth. How dare they throw me? If I don't teach them a lesson, they'll think that I, Jiang Pingji, am a pushover. The system was trustworthy. After gaining some popularity, it immediately helped Jiang Pingji adapt to her new body. As for the rest, it could only say that it was powerless. To put it bluntly, there was not much the system could do. If Jiang Pingji could not save herself, the outcome would be the same. Of course, the system was very confident in Jiang Pingji not because of anything else, but because of the Force Fusion plus 30 attribute. The so-called Force Fusion was to digitize the soul's force when it was alive and integrate it into the current body. It was one of the host's advantages, winning at the starting line. It quietly glanced at Jiang Pingji's Force Fusion. It was only a pathetic 3%. But knock on the blackboard, there's an important point. The final increase in Force Fusion was 30 points. It was only 3%, but it could add 30 points to Force Fusion. The original owner of this body, Lu Lanting, only had a Force Fusion of 5. He was a real fighter. Therefore, the system could calculate Jiang Pingji's Force Fusion in her previous life. It was so high that it dared not look at it. The body's Force Fusion and Force Fusion only had 35 points, which was basically the same as an ordinary adult man in this era. If that was the case, it would seem that Jiang Pingji was in a very dangerous situation. Actually, Jiang Pingji had a high chance of winning. How could a woman with such force in her previous life not know how to fight? My dear friends, with a wealth of combat experience, wouldn't it be easy to beat up an adult man who was messy and disorganized? Although the first scene of the live broadcast was already bloody and unladylike, but if the scene was a little more unique, perhaps it would attract more viewers? Zhang was and force queen, the queen was queen. It was quite efficient. Not long after, Jiang Pingji felt that the stiffness in her limbs had decreased by more than half. Although her flexibility was still worrying. But this was someone else's body, so she could not ask for too much. She moved a little and the results were gratifying. She couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. To avoid trouble, the bandits tied all the noble ladies up when they got off the carriages. Even the unconscious Jiang Pingji was no exception. She opened her eyes and sat up from the ground. She frowned and moved her wrist. The bunny girl was the first to notice Jiang Pingji's actions. She could not hide her joy and tears welled up in her round eyes. Brother Lanting, you're finally awake. That's great. Jiang Pingji looked in the direction of the voice. According to Lu Lanting's memory, the girl in front of her was very close to her. Yes, I'm awake. She smiled at the girl reassuringly. She was never stingy when it came to beautiful women. However, the harmonious atmosphere was interrupted by a disharmonious voice. Wei Jingxian sat in the corner with her hands tied behind her back. She snorted coldly and said with a sharp tone, "Why did you wake up at a time like this? Even if he wakes up, he would still be a burden." If she remained unconscious, the bandits might feel disgusted and let her go for now. Maybe they would come to rescue her. Wei Jingxian pursed her lips stubbornly to hide her true emotions. But in the next second she met Jiang Pingji's gaze. She could not help but blush. But very quickly she reacted and her face turned pale again. She snorted and turned her back to the wall. Out of sight, out of mind, out of mind. Jiang Pingji saw Wei Jingxian's reaction and was intrigued. Wow, she's a proud classical beauty. Jiang Pingji's cuteness was on point. Jiang Pingji did not have many hobbies in her life, but there was one thing she could not bear to change. She was obsessed with beautiful women. At that moment, a white message with a string of question marks appeared on the screen. It was sent by the first audience member who did not seem to understand what was going on. Perhaps the room full of Lolas was too beautiful, so the audience member stayed. The rabbit girl looked at Jiang Pingji hesitantly, then at the sulking and ignoring Wei Jingxian. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. At that moment, Jiang Pingji tried to twist her wrist. The rabbit girl saw her move and said sadly, "Brother Lanting, even though you're my sister, I'm still used to calling you that. Those bandits tied me up so tightly that I couldn't untie it." Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. She could not even break free from such simple restraints. How could she be the leader of the 7th Division? It was just a simple training course, and even a child who had just started school could break free. However, she did not let go immediately. Instead, she chose to maintain her original state. "Don't be afraid, one. Your brother is here." After saying that, there was some muffled laughter in the room, as if mocking Jiang Pingji for overestimating herself and calling herself brother. Jiang Pingji did not take it to heart. As one of the lambs waiting to be slaughtered, her words were laughable. However, Shangguan, who was only 11 years old, was just a child who had just been weaned and needed to be comforted. "But I'm still scared," sob. "I'm scared." Shangguan was a little girl who liked to show off. She was the eldest daughter of the Shangguan family and the treasure of the family. She had been pampered since she was young and had never suffered such grievances. For the poetry outing, she had specially styled her hair into a cute double-ringed bun. Now that her hair was messy, she looked very pitiful. Chapter 5. Not only was Shangguan not comforted, but she cried even more pitifully. Low sneers and disdain came from the surroundings, mocking her for overestimating herself. Wasn't Lu Lanting a complete loser? If he really had the ability, how could he have been scared by the bandits to the point of having a fever that wouldn't subside? Jiang Pingji glanced at them and directly translated the inner thoughts of the noble ladies. She couldn't refute it. Who asked the original owner to be a fighter? Fighting 5 trash, no human rights. Calculating the time, Jiang Pingji estimated that the bandits would be wiped out soon. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes and thought of a plan. See, this is the inconvenience of not having enough strength. If she was still her old self, why would she need to use her brain? She directly kicked open the door of the small dark room and tore apart any bandit she encountered with her bare hands. Her martial arts skills were not something that could be reasoned with. The simple and dim room was filled with a depressing atmosphere. No one said a word. The one who was most confused was probably that audience member. After a while, Jiang Pingji saw that the audience could not help but post a third bullet screen. This time it was not a series of question marks. Tudufeichio, 5. What is the host broadcasting? He stared blankly for a long time. Other than a few words from a group of people in ancient costumes, there was nothing else. However, the Lolas in this room were really good-looking. When they grew up, they would definitely charm people to death. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and seemed to be thinking about something. Seeing this, the system immediately reminded her, you don't have to speak directly. You can use your mind to transmit what you want to say. Host V. The main mission is to broadcast how to be a queen, and the current side mission is to save a room full of little Lolas. If the live broadcast fails, you may see all the little Lolas, including me, being raped by the bandits outside in real time. The system, what kind of host would be so brazen and frightening? The audience member sent another string of white ellipses. It was obvious that he was also frightened by Jiang Pingji, who was tough and violent. Tudufeichio. I hope the host can complete the side mission. Moreover, it's currently the harmony period, so the scene of the side mission failing cannot be shown. The audience member was also extremely embarrassed, or it could be said that he did not take what Jiang Pingji said seriously. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and secretly poked the system. Will it be banned if the content is too inappropriate for children? The system said proudly, this is a direct live broadcast through the channel of the plane. The means over there cannot block the host's live broadcast channel. Since it was marked as a palace struggle live broadcast system, how could it not have dark content that was not suitable for children? Thinking about it, in order to climb up the ranks, which of the women in the palace didn't do their best? Which of them did not exhaust their brains? Which one of them didn't use all their means? Which one of them was not sinister and vicious? The system's mind was filled with plots and schemes, but Jiang Pingji was thinking of another scene. As someone who was used to seeing blood, she had a high degree of acceptance towards it. In her eyes, an ordinary scene might scare the audience on the other side of the live broadcast to tears, and it might even cause psychological trauma. As for the system's idea of broadcasting the internal fights from the concubines to the Empress, when did she agree to that? Previously, he had only promised the system to start a live broadcast. As for the content of the live broadcast, there was no specific scope. It was true that Jiang Pingji advocated force, but she was not a simple-minded person in the eyes of others. Only those who had stayed in the 7th Corps and deeply experienced Jiang Pingji's means would know that when she was evil, she could even do evil to herself. While they were talking, Jiang Pingji heard a burst of dense footsteps coming from afar. She secretly counted the number of people. More than half of the bandits in the village had come. The rest of the people were either standing guard or were probably waiting. Would it be their turn to enjoy after everyone else had enjoyed them? The bandit who opened the door was naturally the head of the village, who was also the leader of the group of bandits. Everyone enjoyed themselves today. These are the most precious beauties in Hejian County. Normally, even beggars would be driven away by a single glance. The curly-bearded man laughed heartily. He casually pulled a noble lady's hair and pulled her into his embrace. The noble girl's shoulders shrank and her body trembled like a sieve. Because her hair was pulled, her scalp hurt, but she did not dare to scream, lest she would suffer more humiliation. She could only bite her lips, and her face was full of horror and humiliation. The bandit leader only cared about his own happiness. He did not notice the slight change in the eyes of the noble girl in his arms. Jiang Pingji saw all this. She looked away and saw that the 2nd and 3rd leaders of the bandits were also hugging a beauty. If she did not make a move, it was estimated that in a few minutes, these people would have a scene that was not suitable for children on the spot. Raising her eyebrows, Jiang Pingji suddenly stood up. Her slightly heroic face was full of playfulness and she shouted to stop them. Wait a minute. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the midst of the coarse male voices, this slightly heroic female voice was particularly conspicuous. What? The outstretched hand of the bandit leader paused. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw that Jiang Pingji had stood up, but her clothes were still so messy. The bandit leader could not help but scornfully tease her. Could it be that you want to play with me on her behalf? At that moment, the girl who was being held hostage by the bandit leader had a pale face, and her eyes flashed with pain. Jiang Pingji looked the leader up and down and suddenly said something shocking. Replace? Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? If you dare to touch the one in your arms again, don't even think about knowing which little beast killed your sweetheart. As soon as the words came out, everyone was dumbfounded. Some were bandits who did not know the truth, and others were secretly determined to seek death rather than live a life defiled by noble girls. For these noble girls, the interests of their families and their reputation were the most important, even more than their own lives. If these bandits succeeded, not only would they lose their chastity, but they would also have to give themselves to so many people. Not only would they lose face, but their families would also be humiliated. They could even guess that if this scandal were to spread, the unmarried girls in their families would also be despised. Only by mustering up the courage to commit suicide and preserve their chastity could one or two be saved. However, Jiang Pingji's actions attracted their attention, and they all forgot about seeking death. What? The noble girls looked at each other, not knowing what Jiang Pingji was trying to do. Hee, you stinky woman, what nonsense are you talking about? Our leader is wise and powerful. Who dares to touch his woman? A small bandit who did not understand but thought it was awesome chimed in and belittled Jiang Pingji, and at the same time flattered the bandit leader. Chapter 6. What did you say? The bandit leader strode forward, wanting to grab Jiang Pingji's collar and ask for clarification. She sidestepped and spun around, nimbly avoiding the hand that was reaching out in excitement. I don't like it when people touch me. Seeing that his hands missed, the bandit leader was slightly startled. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. Coupled with his bearded face, he looked as ferocious as a green-faced Xianxia. Who are you? What do you know? It doesn't matter who I am. You wouldn't know me anyway. All you need to know is that I know more than you know. The bandit leader's eyes flickered, and he looked at Jiang Pingji with cold, murderous intent. He even held the hilt of the sword at his waist with one hand. I know that you committed murder in a fit of rage because your sweetheart was defiled to death. In the end you were flogged and exiled to Zisang. It's just that you ran away halfway and sneaked to Hejin County to become a bandit. Am I right? The bandits in the background were dumbfounded, and the other noble ladies were even more attracted by her actions, forgetting that they were in danger for a moment. What was going on? The system. Damn, how did this guy know? How did she know all this without the help of the system? As a super system that could broadcast across dimensions, its functions were naturally not limited to those revealed. It planned to slowly reveal its abilities in the future. If Jiang Pingji wanted to know, she had to do a live broadcast obediently. She could not scold it every few days, and she could not threaten it by going on strike. It was like a fruit hanging on a pole, luring the hard-working donkey to keep chasing. Jiang Pingji could use money to buy information from it. As long as it was not highly confidential, she could buy it with money, including the past of the bandit leader. But it was poor now. Even if it wanted to help Jiang Pingji, it was powerless. So the question was, how was this guy so sure that the bandit leader had such a tragic sweetheart? The leader of the bandits stared at Jiang Pingji coldly, then suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. What nonsense. You haven't visited your mother in a long time, right? Jiang Pingji was not affected. She continued, you claimed to be a filial son, but you were exiled and fled. You were even willing to become a bandit, but you never went back to see her. Is that your filial piety? As if someone had pressed the pause button, the bandit leader's smile froze in a comical arc. In the end, he fiercely gritted his teeth and revealed his ferocious appearance. Oh, so you want to kill me now? He was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Other than scratching it a few times, what else could he do? Have you ever thought about your pitiful sweetheart when you committed such atrocities against a woman? Before she died, she was full of joy, waiting to marry you. The room was silent, and the atmosphere was so oppressive that no one dared to breathe. Everyone couldn't help but peek at the bandit leader's face out of curiosity. There was a bold bandit who wanted to take advantage of a noble lady. The bandit leader drew out his long sword and almost cut off his nose. Ignoring the frightened bandit, he looked at Jiang Pingji coldly and asked, "Tell me, which animal did this?" Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. Her posture was so arrogant that she was like a queen sitting on the throne. Is this your attitude when you ask for help? You are my prisoner. If you don't tell me, believe it or not, I will let a group of brothers gang up on you bitches one by one. The bandit leader had lost his patience because of Jiang Pingji's provocation. He almost couldn't control his explosive temper. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to be threatened at all. Her hands were tied, but she looked at ease as if she was the bandit in control of everything. What are you laughing at? Seeing Jiang Pingji's smile, the bandit leader had an indescribable strange feeling in his heart. I'm laughing at the same scene when your sweetheart was forced. The situation is so similar. Jiang Pingji's reputation as a devil spread throughout the 7th Corps. Many officers were deeply affected by her. In addition to her frightening strength, she was also known for her mouth. Strong and violent strength plus the max skill of poisoning people to death equals a moving killing machine in human form. If the troublemaker was in a good mood, he might be able to keep his body intact. If he was in a bad mood, he would live a life worse than death. As soon as the words came out, the bandit leader's anger, which was on the verge of exploding, was forcibly suppressed. He reached out and pushed the noblewoman forward. She directly fell into Jiang Pingji's arms, which made her pretty face blush. The bandit leader suppressed his voice and threatened, "How dare you lie to me? When I have enough fun with you, I will sell you to the brothel." May I ask which part of what I said was false from the beginning to the end? If it was false, would you not dare to move? Jiang Pingji smiled contemptuously. Her black hair, which was obviously to add to her feminine image, was set off by her charm. It was not the charm that attracted men, but the charm that attracted women. It was the kind that was a little bad but not too bad. It was full of seductive charm that tickled people's hearts. Even Wei Jingxian, who didn't want to talk to her at first, quietly turned around. Her eyes were filled with vague concern, confusion, and suspicion. I've done everything you wanted me to do. Then tell me which animals did this to Xianxia. He inserted his fingers into his hair and looked as if he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Everyone else could not help but be moved. Only Jiang Pingji sneered. She said, she died a few years ago and you even forgot her name? She's called Xianxia? The bandit leader's movement froze. His eyes were now really bloodshot. Yes, his sweetheart was not called Xianxia. His behavior just now was half true. On one hand, he hoped that Jiang Pingji really knew something, but on the other hand, he secretly hoped that it was just a trick. Fine. The bandit leader wiped his face with both hands and took a deep breath. As long as you tell me which animals hurt Emonyang, I can guarantee that you will walk out of here safely. No one will dare to lay a finger on you. Refuse. Your offer is too little. How can I alone be worth such important information? Jiang Pingji was not tempted at all. Then what do you want? The bandit leader hurriedly asked. His gaze swept across all the noble ladies in the room, and he suddenly came to a realization. He sneered and spat, really greedy. He actually wants all the beauties. It's up to you. If you don't believe me, you can reject my offer. You can try and see if I'll be forced to tell you a few words. Jiang Pingji looked like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Her eyes swept across all the faces of the bandits and she snorted in disdain. In an instant, everyone had an indescribable feeling. It was as if they were virgins who had been molested and played with. The humiliation and discomfort they felt in their hearts. No, who was the one who was molested? Who was the one who suffered? For a moment, N-Face was still confused. Boss. Although some of them were influenced by Jiang Pingji, the rest were still very professional. They had robbed so many noble ladies in Hejin County. Would those people let them go? Chapter 7. Shut up. For the bandit leader, nothing was more important than finding out who killed Emonyang. I'll do it. The people here were all fugitives who had turned into bandits. Who would really obey anyone? The bandit leader's actions had hurt the group's interests. Since that was the case, they might as well kill him and enjoy the beauties. They didn't have anyone they liked anyway. That B*TCH's tricks were no threat to them. As they thought about it, Jiang Pingji suddenly asked the second-in-command, whose eyes were flickering, "Do you want to know where your son was kidnapped?" Her beautiful eyes turned to another bandit. "Don't you want to know how many times your wife and brothers cheated on you?" The crowd was speechless. Now those who were tempted did not dare to act rashly. Unlike the bandit leader's secret past, many people in the village knew that the second-in-command had lost his son when he was young. They also knew that the second-in-command's body could still function, but he couldn't have a baby. Without a baby he was no different from a eunuch. Therefore his son was his last hope. It was very important. As for the fourth-in-command's wife cheated on him. Pfft. Some of the well-informed ones were laughing in their hearts. Apart from the blockheads and the fourth-in-command himself, the other brothers more or less knew about it. Not only that, some of them even went to visit. However, some of them laughed in their hearts, but soon they couldn't laugh anymore. The fourth-in-command didn't have any feelings for his wife, but he was very possessive. If he knew who had touched her, the consequences would be fatal. For a moment, everyone had their own thoughts. No one dared to cover Jiang Pingji's mouth. Wouldn't that be a confession? Therefore they could only sweat in secret and hope that Jiang Pingji was making a wild guess. But who could make such an accurate wild guess? The moment she opened her mouth, she stepped on the sore spot of others. That was too mysterious. If you want to know. Jiang Pingji looked around and saw everyone's reaction. Then in front of all the bandits she easily broke the hemp rope that bound her hands. Suddenly she smiled sweetly and said in a low voice, one by one. There's no hurry. Jiang Pingji was still young, but her eyes were clear. Even when she was surrounded by a group of people she did not have stage fright. It could be seen that she had a card up her sleeve. Looking at her clothes, it was obvious that she was either a rich or noble young master, daughter of a noble family. How could she know about ordinary people like them in advance? Without the possibility of investigating in advance, she hit the nail on the head with every sentence. For a moment, the same thought appeared in everyone's mind. Could it be that she's also a godly diviner? Some people who had heard a lot of news couldn't help but think of Dongqing dynasty's famous iron-mouthed man, Master Yuanjing. It was said that not only was Master Yuanjing knowledgeable, but he was also well-versed in the past and present. He could see through a person's identity and background with just a glance. With such a vague idea, there were naturally some bandits who were skeptical, including the two who were named. Or it could be said that they had no choice but to believe it, because Jiang Pingji directly stepped on their weaknesses and said nothing wrong. The second master missed his son so much that he was going crazy, and the fourth master could not tolerate any man touching his woman. At this point the system vaguely guessed Jiang Pingji's real intention. She was not only buying time for herself, but also for the noble families who had been captured. At the same time it was also the most vicious part of her plan. Killing with a borrowed knife. The system almost burst into tears when it thought of that. With such a ferocious and powerful host, there was no need to worry about the throne of the Empress. The noble ladies were all asked to leave the small dark room in a daze. The bandits were still drooling over them, but they did not make a move. Although he hated those gazes compared to the previous embarrassing situation, it was much better now. Wei Jingxian secretly tugged on Jiang Pingji's sleeve, her eyes filled with suspicion and wariness. You? Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. Is she starting to suspect me? She looked down and calmly met Wei Jingxian's gaze. I can protect Jing under the pear tree, and I can do the same now. Wei Jingxian was very naughty when she was young. She once avoided the servants and climbed up a pear tree. She could not get down and cried for a long time. In the end it was Lu Lanting who found her and coaxed her to catch her. In the end the little girl was too plump, and Lu Lanting, who was a weakling, was forced to recuperate for 3 months. That was a secret that only Wei Jingxian and Lu Lanting knew. Not even her personal servants knew about it. The wariness in Wei Jingxian's eyes faded, and she became more worried about Jiang Pingji. It's not as simple as climbing a pear tree. As long as it's related to Jing, I have to do it no matter how hard it is, Jiang Pingji said solemnly. Jiang Pingji said solemnly. She raised her hand to tuck Wei Jingxian's messy hair behind her ear and straightened her crooked hairpin. A gentleman's promise is worth the weight of the 5 mountains. This is not sweet talk. Wei Jingxian blushed at the thoughtful gesture, but she felt terrible when she thought of Jiang Pingji's gender. Her feelings for Lu Lanting were not romantic, but they were still yearning for love. Lu Lanting was her fiancé, and the elders of both families thought highly of him. Wei Jingxian did not reject him. If they could get married, they would at least treat each other with respect. But now, everything was ruined. The image in her mind was a mockery of her. Now, how can you still be considered a gentleman? Jiang Pingji noticed that Wei Jingxian did not mean what she said. She smiled and said, "If Jing'er says yes, then I am. Jing'er says no, then I am not." Wei Jingxian was embarrassed by his words. She could no longer maintain her cold and aloof expression. You, could it be that after her identity was exposed she was too lazy to keep up her facade? Don't worry. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to stop her. Her eyes were full of confidence. Don't you trust me? Wei Jingxian was speechless. If Lu Lanting had not been frightened by the bandit's knife, she would have trusted Jiang Pingji a little. The bandit's stronghold was simple and shabby. There were only a few thatched huts of different sizes scattered around. If it weren't for the fact that the bandits were all tall, strong, ferocious, and had the air of bandits all over their faces that said, "I'm not a good guy," one would have thought that this was a small, ordinary village hidden deep in the mountains. Jiang Pingji had the bandits' weakness. The first master, the second master, and the fourth master were all under her control. The other bandits did not dare to act rashly. Occasionally they would sneak a peek at the noblewomen, but at the same time they avoided Jiang Pingji's line of sight. After leaving the small, shabby hut, the bandits led them to a small hall with a simple signboard. "I'll talk to you in private. Can we move to the back hall?" Jiang Pingji stared at them with a faint smile. "Some of you have a guilty conscience. If I say it in front of everyone, I'm afraid you'll jump up in anger and kill me. I don't mind blood. You guys are also rough men who are used to seeing the wind and waves. But who told you to have such a beautiful woman here? If you scare them, it'll be a sin." Jiang Pingji's gaze swept over the noblewomen one by one. Her gaze lingered on Wei Jingxian for a second. The girls were embarrassed, but none of them dared to make a sound. If someone else had said those words, they would have been ashamed to death. But Lu Lanting, she wasn't a man with a handle. If she overreacted, would she not look like a spoiled brat? Wei Jingxian could not help but blush, but she quickly regained her composure. Chapter 8. Let's talk in the back hall alone? You have guts. I admire you. Please. The bandit leader seemed to have read some books. Although his behavior was also vulgar compared to the bandits around him, he looked more scholarly and refined. While Jiang Pingji was sizing up the bandit leader, he was sizing her up as well. Looking at Jiang Pingji, then looking at the noble ladies who couldn't help but hide behind her, there was an indescribable strange feeling in their hearts. It seemed that everyone in the house, including this woman with a temper, were women. Why were they so manly? Lanting. Wei Jingxian's heart raced when she saw that Jiang Pingji was really going to talk to the bandit leader alone. Although they had fallen into the bandits' lair and lost their reputation, they had not been harmed in any way. If they could be saved, their reputation would be tarnished. But if Jiang Pingji was alone with a bandit, it would be hard to explain. "Don't worry. Wait for me." Jiang Pingji blinked her right eye. Her mischievous look made people's hearts skip a beat. The back hall was even simpler than the front hall. Jiang Pingji sat down on the main seat, crossed her long legs and tilted her body. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was unrestrained and unrestrained. In the front, without Jiang Pingji's presence, the girls' days felt like years and they were anxious. "I don't feel safe leaving a bunch of girls in a wolf pack. Let's get straight to the point. I have to go back." Jiang Pingji said she was in a hurry, but it was hard to tell from her posture. "I don't trust those scums out there." The bandit leader stood to the side, his eyes anxious. Emongyang was a thorn in his heart that he could not bear to pull out. Every day and night he wanted to know who killed Emongyang. Jiang Pingji gave him hope and he did not want to wait any longer. "The murderer is right beside you. You just don't know it." Jiang Pingji had a teapot by her hand, but there was a black stain on the rim of the teacup. She glanced at it and was not thirsty at all. The leader of the bandits was not completely brainless. Hearing Jiang Pingji's words, he became suspicious again. He felt that she was using someone else to do her dirty work. Being a bandit leader meant that he had some skills. However, he had met Jiang Pingji, so he was destined to die. She was the most venomous person in the 7th Division. She was a demon who could spill all the secrets they tried to hide with just one word. The thing that the officers under her were most afraid of was meeting her gaze. They always had the illusion that they were walking around naked. "I know you have doubts. You think that I'm tricking you into killing each other. I'm only speaking my mind. It's up to you whether you believe me or not." Jiang Pingji snorted in her heart. This body was too weak for her. She could definitely escape by herself, but those noble ladies might be mistakenly killed by the furious bandits. For a perfectionist like her who had obsessive-compulsive disorder, this was simply intolerable. The murderer is from your hometown, the one with a lame foot and a slightly bent back. While you were out hunting, he took the opportunity to force himself on Yang and threatened her not to say a word. Yang was deeply in love with you. She felt so guilty that she killed herself in the end. The bandit leader's doubts disappeared when he heard that. He could not believe it anymore. Jiang Pingji was not the only one who didn't know that he and the lame man were from the same hometown. They would at most nod at each other and occasionally take care of each other, but they kept their distance. They did not tell anyone about their relationship. How could he not believe Jiang Pingji when she pointed it out? If you don't believe me, you can take off his clothes and see if there are any wounds on his back from when Yang was raped. Yang is a chaste woman. She would rather die than submit to them. She fought them with all her might, but she's just a weak first-level girl. As soon as he finished speaking, the bandit leader walked out with his sword in hand. Not long after, the terrified screams of the noble ladies could be heard. Smelling the stench of blood in the air, her plump lips curled up slightly as she said in a clear voice, "Next." The system was speechless. Even though it was an emotionless system, it still felt like it was going to explode at the sight of its host. The second-in-command walked in with a pale face. He looked at Jiang Pingji with a guarded expression. The leader had rushed out of the back hall and grabbed an inconspicuous man. Without a word, he tore off his clothes. His expression was deranged and his eyes were bloodshot. The sight of him sent chills down one's spine. The man had knelt down and begged for mercy. Somehow the leader had provoked him and chopped off his head. Your son was so young when he went missing. Jiang Pingji was not affected by the screams of the noble ladies. She could smell the blood in the air and knew that the first stage of her goal had been achieved. You want to see him? Of course. Speaking of his son, the second-in-command's desire for his son took over. His eyes were sparkling. He was an idiot. He never did anything serious. He always stirred up trouble because he was strong. When he was rich, he enjoyed himself. He slept in brothels and had sex with prostitutes. When he had no money, he went looking for his parents. When he was old, he married an unlucky man in the village who had lost his mother. After 2 years of marriage, he had a chubby boy. However, having a child did not calm him down. He continued to cause trouble every day. Once he kicked an iron plate. He was beaten up by a more powerful person. He even got kicked twice and fainted from the pain. Later he recovered. The job could still be used, but the doctor said he would not be able to have a child. He immediately thought of his only son when he could not have a child. He kept a close eye on him every day, fearing that something would happen to him. If this child died, wouldn't he be without descendants for the rest of his life? No one would offer incense to him after he died. Without a filial son, what was there to look forward to? However, what he feared came true. His son disappeared when he was 4 years old. He could not be found. His wife cried so much that she was blind. Your son? Everything bodes ill. Jiang Pingji shook her head and sighed. It is the people who suffer from natural and man-made disasters. That year there was no harvest. You and your wife took good care of your son. You had good intentions, but it was easy to get into trouble. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something. His eyes turned red and he fell to the ground as if all the energy in his body had been sucked out. During the year of the drought, everyone could not afford to eat. They could only eat wild grass and tree bark, but some people would catch other people's children to fill their stomachs. He was young and strong. He could barely feed his family. Sometimes he was so greedy that he would touch other people's children. Thinking of this, the second leader knelt on the ground helplessly and crazily, crying and praying. With tears streaming down his face, he begged, "Living immortal, please tell me which black-hearted person actually treats my son like this. He is my lifeline." Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and said calmly, "Since you are begging me, I have to tell you. The person who ate your son is from the same village as you. He is also a greedy person like you. I don't know more than that. You can find out for yourself." The system poked Jiang Pingji. "Didn't you plan to let them kill each other? Why didn't she tell them who the murderer was? She just said it was someone from the same village. What if they really went to the village to look for him?" Stupid. Jiang Pingji secretly curled her lips and chuckled. "I'm not a god. How would I know who is from the same village? System, yen%, yen hashtag yen hashtag. Chapter 9. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pingji licked her dry lips. However, he is from Hejian County and some of the bandits outside are also from Hejian County. If he is lucky, he will meet someone from the same village. Birds of a feather flock together. The traffic in this world is so troublesome. Even if he becomes a bandit, most of the bandits he meets are from the same village or nearby villages. The possibility is very high. Do you believe it? She was just misleading the head two into thinking that the murderer was a gangster from the same village and believing what she said. When the head two went to ask for evidence, the two sides would have a conflict. They were a group of hot-tempered and brainless people. Wouldn't it become a scuffle? From the beginning to the end, she did not say that the murderer was from the village. Even if they killed each other, what did it have to do with her? By the way, don't go. Jiang Pingji stood up and stopped the head two from going to ask for evidence. I don't feel at ease leaving those beautiful girls outside. I won't talk to the head four alone. Help me talk to him. After that, Jiang Pingji talked about a bunch of bandits. Of course, she did not mention their names, but their physical characteristics, which were very easy to remember. Finally, head two, I will add you. Jiang Pingji smiled and the head two suddenly shivered. As for whether you want to tell the truth or not, I won't interfere. She used this attitude to show that she did not cause them to kill each other. He just told the truth. Otherwise, she could directly call the head four in and tell him all the bandits who touched his wife. The whole village would be in chaos. In addition, she had another purpose, to deepen the head two's trust in her words. He was secretly glad that he did not hear Jiang Pingji say that he had an affair with the head four's wife. His face darkened when he was called out. Could it be that the girl in front of him was watching them when they were working with the head four's wife? Everything was ready except for one thing. When the time was right, they could prepare to close the net. Jiang Pingji walked out of the back hall, and Wei Jingxian and Shang Guanwan hurried to greet her. They found that she looked the same as before she entered the back hall, and her expression was normal. I'm fine. Those guys are probably going to settle the score now. They won't be able to care about us for now. The bandits in the hall had already left, probably to settle the score. However, there were still a few bandits standing guard at the door. That thief said he would keep his promise and let us go. Shang Guanwan hugged Jiang Pingji, feeling wronged. She looked disappointed. Now he has sent so many people to guard the door. He's obviously trying to break his promise. Brother Lanting, what should we do now? Knowing that Lu Lanting was not a brother but a sister, she felt that it was okay to be close. In the past, she had liked Lu Lanting and hoped to have a gentle brother who would protect her. He was not like the brothers in the family who seemed harmonious on the surface but were secretly mean. Shang Guanwan had a good impression of Lu Lanting. However, at that time, Lu Lanting was engaged to Wei Jingxian, so she treated other noble ladies with disdain, which made her depressed for a long time. Although Shang Guanwan was young, she was very clever and cunning. Lu Lanting was engaged to Wei Jingxian. Even if she treated Lu Lanting as a brother, others would still be jealous of her. Now that the brother had become the sister, she could act coquettishly. Could it be that those talkative maidservants would also make irresponsible remarks when they saw two beautiful girls hugging each other? Shang Guanwan was favored in the family not only because she was the only daughter of the first wife, but also because she liked to act coquettishly in front of the elders. She was different from the other noble ladies who behaved like yes-men. He was like a happy person, always able to coax the elders until their faces were glowing and they were smiling non-stop. Wei Jingxian's eyes widened when she saw Shang Guanwan like that. She was about to say that it was inappropriate for men and women to touch each other, not to mention that Lu Lanting was engaged. However, when she saw the doting smile on Jiang Pingji's face, she swallowed her words. Her chest hurt. Lu Lanting was a woman. A woman. A woman. I didn't expect them to keep their promise. Why do you think these vicious bandits are gentlemanly? Jiang Pingji imitated Lu Lanting's usual tone and slowly added her own. They're just stalling for time. But... Shang Guanwan's eyes widened. She covered her mouth with both hands, afraid that the bandits outside would overhear her. She lowered her voice and said anxiously, But, if they don't give up, we'll still be in danger. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and gently pinched the little girl's cheeks. Who said so? Brother Lanting will take you away soon. Shang Wanwan's chubby cheeks were full of collagen. It felt so good to the touch. Jiang Pingji took the jade hairpin from her hair. "Let me borrow your hairpin." Shang Wanwan blushed and hid behind Wei Jingxian coquettishly. "Brother Lanting, now that you've lost your cover, you've finally shown your foxtail." Jiang Pingji was amused. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and licked the back of her molars. Her smile was full of evil charm and a little naughty. "Since you're teasing me, I won't take you away. But I'll take Jinger with me." Wei Jingxian, who was ridiculed for no reason, was embarrassed and annoyed, but Jiang Pingji was indifferent. In the end, Jiang Pingji could only glare at her to warn her not to talk nonsense. To an outsider, Jiang Pingji looked shy. If it was a man who was being glared at, his bones would have gone limp. Needless to say, there really was a person whose bones had gone soft. But it was not a bandit. It was Tudu Feiqiu, a member of the audience. As a member of the audience, Tudu Feiqiu tipped Jiang Pingji 520 lollipops to show his presence. "Tudu Feiqiu, that little girl is so cute. I almost fell off the computer table. 520 lollipops? What the hell?" Jiang Pingji frowned and poked the system. "What's that?" The system was speaking in an electronic voice, but it spoke very quickly. Jiang Pingji could feel its excitement and joy. It was so excited that it was incoherent. "Hey, this is the first time you've tipped in your life. Remember to thank the audience for tipping." One audience member only had one popularity point and they could only accumulate it once a day. In other words, no matter how many times an audience member entered the channel, they could only accumulate one popularity point a day. But tipping was different. One lollipop was worth one streaming coin and it could bring one popularity point. 520 lollipops was equivalent to 52 popularity points. Jiang Pingji could get half of it and the other half belonged to the system. "Thank you." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and asked bluntly, "You haven't been infected by a virus, have you?" That's a matter of manners." The system thought of Jiang Pingji's cruel behavior and regretted it. The host was a person of her own will. Rudely exposing the system, she rolled her eyes. "But all I hear is your flattery." Her confrontation with the system was carried out in secret, so the audience member Tudu Feiqiu did not know. Chapter 10. Looking at the room full of noble ladies who regarded her as their backbone, Jiang Pingji stopped fooling around and became more serious. Her tone was firm. "All of you wait patiently. When the time is right, we will be able to leave. Those thieves will be fighting amongst themselves soon." Playing with the hairpin that Shang Wanwan had lent her, Jiang Pingji became more and more dissatisfied. This was not a gold or silver hairpin, but a bright and pure jade hairpin. Even if she didn't know much about it, she knew that it was very valuable. In her hand, the hairpin felt warm and smooth to the touch, and the style was lively and cute, which showed the care of the person who gave it. Although this jade hairpin was expensive, it was not as easy to use as a golden hairpin. At least it was not sharp enough. Shang Wanwan sat beside her and rested her chin on her hands. "Brother Lanting, do you like this hairpin?" "I don't like it." Jiang Pingji looked up at the little girl and said honestly, "It's not sharp enough to kill." Shang Wanwan's face turned pale. She recalled the bloody scene of the bandit leader chopping off someone's head. She could not imagine Lu Lanting to be such a cruel person. She muttered, "Brother Lanting, don't let me see you chop off someone's head." Jiang Pingji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She rolled her eyes and smirked. "How can your hairpin cut people? The most I can do is stab it in the throat." After saying that, she made a feint, scaring Shang Wanwan so much that she jumped up like a startled rabbit. She immediately ran far away and hid behind Wei Jingxian. Other than the two ladies who were close to Lu Lanting, the rest of the noble ladies sat further away from Lu Lanting. Some of them tidied up their messy hair and clothes, but none of them approached Lu Lanting to talk. They did not interact much with Lu Lanting, and some of them did not even know her. "This is for you." How could one's hairpin hurt anyone? Wei Jingxian's feelings towards Jiang Pingji were very complicated. However, after this incident, the two of them had gone through thick and thin together. They shared the same revolutionary feelings. She handed over a palm-sized, gorgeous dagger decorated with gold, silver, and jade. Jiang Pingji took it and thanked her in a low voice. She did not ask why she had a dagger with her. But that was not the point. She knew that Wei Jingxian had intended to use the dagger to end her own life. How could a noble lady in Hejian County tolerate such humiliation? Hey, women in ancient times were like this. They could easily commit suicide for the sake of their reputation and integrity. Jiang Pingji looked at the small and exquisite dagger and felt an indescribable annoyance in her heart. However, seeing that the dagger was still sharp, her mood was slightly better. Looking at the time, it should be about time. You and Wanner go to the back hall and wait. I'll go deal with the guy outside. The scene will be a little bloody, I'm afraid you guys can't take it. Of Jiang blood. Wei Wanyu, Jiang can, S1 can Jiang as if she could. Of the Yu, the will you, the you can you, wait. Jiang yi wei. The Jiang about Chen the outside. The of Jiang Yun Qing was. It outside. She could su at su gu gushan at Tang Yu. At that moment, the bandits outside exploded one by one, just as Jiang Pingji had expected. The situation was like this. The bandit boss could finally avenge his lover, and it could be said that one of his worries had been resolved. But now that he had gotten his revenge, his heart felt empty. He needed some time to calm down. But the brothers around him did not know what to do. They continued to make noise louder than 500 ducks. The second and fourth brothers looked like they were cross-eyed. The other brothers spoke one after another, but they all agreed on the same thing. They could not let go of the beauties. They were bandits. What did they need to keep their word? However, the consequence of not doing anything about it was that the second in command killed two of his brothers from the same village out of anger because of what he saw as abnormal emotions. You're crazy, second brother. The others did not expect the argument to turn out this way. I'm not crazy. They ate my son. I want them to pay with their lives. In the beginning, he didn't believe it either. However, when he asked again and again, the other party revealed a flaw and stuttered, which made him more and more suspicious. During the argument, he was so angry that he killed someone. The fourth leader tried to stop him, but he was pushed away. Driven by anger, he said, "Fourth brother, why are you still speaking up for them? Serves you right to be cuckolded by your wife. Serves you right to be cuckolded. Both of them slept with your wife. Do you understand?" As soon as he said that, there was silence. No one dared to look at the fourth leader's face. The second leader looked around. He was in a very unstable state. He pointed at several people. He and he. These people all slept with your wife. Are you angry? You're a man. Are you angry? These two beasts made me lose my family. What's wrong with me killing them? My poor son. He died so miserably. Those who were pointed out were so scared that they took a step back. Their faces turned pale. How could they not understand such a reaction? They really had ulterior motives. The fourth leader's face turned green. On the other side, Jiang Pingji covered the bandit's mouth with one hand and stabbed him with the dagger. Blood splattered. The bandit did not even make a sound. He was already dead. In the darkness, she was like a gust of wind shuttling in the night. Wherever she went, there was no movement. Hiding in the dark, she blended in with the night. She used her breathing technique to greatly reduce her presence. Even her breathing was so light that it was almost inaudible. Fortunately, this body did not have the habit of wearing makeup. Otherwise, the fragrance on her body could expose her existence. In fact, the system felt that Jiang Pingji was overthinking. These bandits were all outlaws with strength and courage. If they were so strong, they would have found another way out. Why would they become bandits? They would go out from time to rob people to survive. The system had no emotions. It was not moved by Jiang Pingji's killing. At most, it muttered that the host was not right and her methods were cruel. But we can't ignore the fact that there is an audience watching the live stream. What the hell is going on? Jumping from an ordinary romance to a horror film? Jiang Pingji killed the bandits one by one with a cold face. Not only was she fast, but she was also very professional. She only needed one slash to kill someone. The victim did not even have time to react. By the time they realized that someone was behind them, Jiang Pingji had swiftly taken their lives. Tudu Feichio's teeth were chattering. His eyes were glued to the livestream screen. He felt like he was soaking in ice water. His hair stood on end and his back broke out in a cold sweat. It was as if someone would touch his neck and cut his head off in the next second. Oh my God. How could such a restricted and disturbing livestream be broadcasted? He was going to call the police. Chapter 11. Jiang Pingji did not have the self-awareness of the livestream at all. Especially after the system's flattery just now, she felt even more sick of it. To her, the so-called live broadcast was nothing more than the system's wishful thinking. In reality, she still had the initiative. The live broadcast was just like that. If there were people who came, they would watch. If there were no people, they would just leave it on. She was used to being the commander of the 7th Division. Now she had to go against her will and ask someone for a reward? What system? Scram to the side. Lu Lanting's body was still young, but Jiang Pingji's strength was astonishing. After a short while, he killed another bandit and quickly cleaned up the aftermath. The force of the blood that spurted out was not light, and it was easy to make a sound. If she was not careful, her position would be exposed. Moreover, if there was too much blood, the smell of blood would be strong within a certain range, and it would be difficult to disperse in a short period of time. If it attracted bandits, then all her efforts would be in vain. Jiang Pingji thought about it calmly and quickly tied a knot in the cloth. Then she hid the bandit's body in the shadows. She had torn her outer robe and cloak into strips just for this moment. Soon, apart from the gangsters she had killed, there were very few left. Coldly looking at the few candles in the bandits' village, Jiang Pingji's plump lips curled into a smile that was full of blood. Under the moonlight, the dagger that had seen blood looked cold, and the faint smell of blood lingered around it. Like Jiang Pingji in her green robes, Lu Lanting's body was gentle and harmless, but her aura made her look like a demon from hell. The system laughed awkwardly. What did you do before? With this kind of strength, he should be partnered with the world-conquering system. He could reach the pinnacle of life in minutes. I thought you knew everything. As for me, my previous profession was naturally a professional killer. As soon as he said that, Tudu Feiqiu and the system, who were scared to death but still couldn't help but watch, felt a chill run down their spines. With a squeak, Jiang Pingji pushed open the half-closed door with one hand. The thick stench of blood wafted out of the house and corpses were strewn all over the place. She didn't even look at it. She stepped over the broken arm under her feet, and the soles of her shoes were full of warm blood. As she walked closer step by step, she left behind a trail of bloody footprints. Looks like you're even dumber than I thought. Inside the room, the bandits who had suffered heavy injuries on both sides were lying on tables or chairs, looking battered and exhausted. The few leaders were still alive. When he raised the broadsword in his hand, violent emotions dominated his mind, and he couldn't stop killing. The 4th leader was the craziest. He was so angry that he wanted to chop those who had cuckolded him. The 2nd leader didn't care. The others wanted to stop him. Later on, he accidentally hurt himself. He was originally not angry, but now he became angry. He spoke without thinking and exposed many scandals, dragging the 2nd master down with him. In the end, it was what Jiang Pingji saw. The group of people no longer had the strength to continue fighting. While they were on guard against the enemy's sneak attacks, they were also panting to recover their strength. When the door opened and the cold night wind blew into the room, everyone shivered. Their frenzied and furious minds calmed down quite a bit. He thought it was the 1st master, but Jiang Pingji's voice rang out instead. They all turned their heads to look and their faces turned pale. Just based on what she said, these people looked at the scene around them and immediately understood that they had been tricked. The bandit leaning on the chair glared angrily and he wanted to kill someone. You sinister be asterisk t. How rude. Jiang Pingji finished off the bandit with a knife. As she pulled out the knife, she twisted her wrist and used her strength to shoot the dagger straight into the neck of another bandit who wanted to call for help. Then there was a thud. The dagger went through his neck and was directly nailed to the wooden pillar behind him. Even if it was a bandit with his limbs intact, she could easily deal with him, let alone a few guys who were struggling at death's door. Jiang Pingji looked at the only 2 survivors in the room. They were already scared out of their wits. They cried for help while shaking their heads and crawling backwards. He was too scared. The thing under him loosened and hot urine stained his crotch, leaving a dark and wet mark on the ground. Don't. Beg you. Don't kill me. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. I was wrong. Please. With a desperate cry, the bandit thought that Jiang Pingji was the black and white impermanence who chased after him. Apologize. What's the use of apologizing? Jiang Pingji sneered. I'm not here to listen to your excuses. This time she did not use a dagger. Instead, she grabbed the bandit's neck with one hand, lifted him up and skillfully broke his neck with her fingers. Seeing that the bandit's eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets, and his 7 orifices were bleeding, Jiang Pingji snorted and then sat on the main seat of the bandit hall. As for the audience and the system who had been watching, they were so scared that they did not dare to make a sound. 3-1. Jiang Pingji said in her heart. The heavy and messy footsteps were getting closer and closer. The bandit boss rushed in and was shocked by the dead people in the room. He looked at Jiang Pingji's cold eyes and saw her playing with a dagger. Her body was lying on the main seat covered with animal skin. Do you know what I hate the most? Kidnapping. You should be aware of this when you fall into my hands. You. The bandit boss looked at the corpses in the room incredulously, especially when he saw a few of them died miserably. He could not help but take a few steps back as if he had been hit by a big hammer. You lied to me? Hey, it sounded like she was the main heroine who was fooled by a scumbag. Her brain had crashed for a long time before she realized that she had been fooled. Jiang Pingji smiled but did not say anything. The bandit boss's brain quickly restarted. With a swish, he pulled out the knife from his waist. The muscles on his arms were bulging and the veins on his face were popping. Obviously, he was extremely angry. Everything in front of him was scarlet. He could not vent his anger without killing Jiang Pingji. Brains are a good thing. I hope you will have one in your next life. Jiang Pingji easily dodged the attack. The corners of her green clothes flew and danced with her movements. There was an indescribable beauty to it. She bent her elbow and hit his ribs. The bandit boss instantly felt that half of his body was numb and he could not feel anything. After that, the surroundings became silent. The only thing that could be heard was the muffled sound of hitting, accompanied by the crisp sound of bones cracking. Jiang Pingji looked refreshed. She stepped on the bandit boss's chest and said condescendingly, "Lie down." The bandit boss tried his best to raise his head. Hot blood kept flowing out of his throat and dyed half of his face red. He still did not understand why he had been fooled. How did she know about Emonyang? Even if he had to die, he had to find out. Chapter 12. He kept trying to say something, but in the end he could only mutter a few words. But Jiang Pingji could understand. Love go small talk netku system. Actually, it wanted to know how Jiang Pingji knew the information and how she managed to deceive the bandits. She looked up at the sky outside the door. It was still early. I'm a kind person. Since you want to know, I'll let you die in peace. System. Are you that kind? You have a sachet with a handkerchief on your waist. Looking at the design, stitching, and age of the sachet, it's obvious that it's not for a man. In other words, the owner should be a young woman. You care a lot about the sachet. You'll rub it subconsciously. Even after you've changed your clothes, you'll still carry it. Who is the owner to you? Jiang Pingji reclined on the main seat with one hand on the armrest and her legs on the other. She looked very lazy. There's a tattoo on your face. Even though you've grown a full beard, if you have good eyesight, you'll still be able to see it. Of course, other than me, everyone else seems to be blind, so they didn't see it. You don't forget to step on others while pretending to be cool. How shameless, system. The tattoo clearly states the county where you were sentenced and the content of your exile to Zisong. But as an exiled criminal, you appeared in Hejian County. Needless to say, you've become a fugitive. I don't think you'd dare return to your hometown to visit your family. If an exiled criminal escaped, it would be fine if they weren't caught, but if they were, they'd be beaten to death. Taking a deep breath, she continued unhurriedly, the way you looked at the sachet was very painful, but also very reluctant and regretful. So I boldly assumed that the woman was already dead, and the cause of her death was not normal. After a bit of deception, it was indeed so. System. Emonyang could have died under other circumstances. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes and said to it, when a person has a very deep impression and emotion about a certain behavior, his breath and expression will change when the same thing happens. This is a reflexive psychological reaction. Therefore, when the noble ladies were pulled out of the carriage and a bandit said he wanted to have a go at them on the spot, the bandit leader reacted that way. The system said, "Who would even think about that? As for your fellow countrymen?" Jiang Pingji grinned, revealing a row of white teeth as if she was amused. When I mentioned the cause of Emonyang's death and that I knew who the murderer was, his reaction told me that he was guilty. It's a kind of fear that someone will find out the truth. Under what circumstances would one have such a reaction? He might not be the murderer, but he must know how Emonyang died and who killed her. He must be a witness and an insider, but he doesn't dare to tell you. Because of his guilty conscience, when the bandit boss interrogated him, as long as the cripple showed even the slightest hint of panic, he would be labeled as Emonyang's murderer. Even if it wasn't sh*t, it was still sh*t. Based on the bandit leader's reaction when he mentioned Emonyang, Jiang Pingji believed that he would not give the cripple any time to explain. As long as he killed the cripple on impulse, the case would be sealed. As for how I know there's evidence on the cripple's back, it's because his clothes are disheveled and I can see his old scars. Unfortunately, he was the one who carried Jiang Pingji down from the carriage, so it was not difficult to spot the scars. Scratches or scars left by sharp weapons on his back can be easily assumed to have been left behind after the battle. But that's only possible if the battle was intense. She did not know when the cripple got those scars, but it gave her an opportunity to make a fuss. How could Jiang Pingji be labeled as a cruel demon by the soldiers of the 7th Army? Other than her strength, it was also because of her mouth. No one wanted to walk around in front of their superior and have them know what they ate and drank in the morning, whether they slept alone the night before, whether they had any weird habits when they slept, whether they cheated on someone. Just thinking about it made them wish they were dead. Because of Jiang Pingji's cruelty, the soldiers of the 7th Army, from the officers to the soldiers, always had the best hygiene and appearance. As for the second leader's son, when you brought him here, I saw a row of children's shoes drying in front of a thatched hut. Jiang Pingji gestured and continued, the size of the shoes should be that of a 4 or 5-year-old child. One of the shoes was very old, but it was washed clean. The soles were worn, which meant that someone had worn them before. The rest of the shoes were new and smooth without any traces of wear. Jiang Pingji was amused. She laughed and said, your second leader was drooling over women, but he still remembered to take those shoes back. There must be a reason. That's why I think he had a son, but he's dead. It was possible that he had been kidnapped and sold, or that he had been taken away by a wild beast. However, since Jiang Pingji wanted them to kill each other, she had to choose the most tragic way. The more the 4th leader loved his son, the more tragic his son's death was, and the harder it was for him to control his emotions. In Lu Lanting's memory, there had been 2 years of drought, so she decided to use the reason of the son's death as food. It was a provocative enough reason. After confirming that, it was up to her how she wanted to bullshit. Regardless of whether her speculation was correct or not, she had to look confident. She had to make people believe that she was telling the truth. Not only that, but the reaction of the person in question would also help her speculate and make her story as close to the truth as possible. When the leader of the bandits said that his lover was Xianxia, his breathing did not change much, so Jiang Pingji knew that he was lying. He tested him and sure enough it was true. From this, it could be seen how good Jiang Pingji's lying skills were. She felt so comfortable that she changed her position and continued to lie down. She even stretched and yawned. It's even simpler for the 4th leader. There are traces of a woman living in this village. Among all the bandits, only the 4th leader is well-dressed, or rather has a woman taking care of him. However, due to his passion for sex, his relationship with that woman is worrying. As for why I think that the woman might have an affair with another man, Jiang Pingji shrugged. The first thing she said was dirty and violent, but she had no self-awareness. First of all, this is a bandit's den. A group of hot-blooded adult men gather together. They have no morals, worldviews, or values. There is a shortage of women. What do you do when you need them? Do you do it yourself or do you help each other? Under these circumstances, the 4th leader has a woman to take care of him, and the atmosphere in the bandit's den is strangely harmonious. System. Host, I think your values are worrying and you need to be saved by a harem. Why don't you find an emperor and have some fun? Jiang Pingji only had one word to say to the system. Get lost. Chapter 13. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. As the saying goes, dumplings are the best and sisters-in-law are the most fun. It was normal for those people to target the 4th master's wife. She didn't think that such a thing wouldn't happen when the 4th master was not around. Therefore Jiang Pingji dared to test the waters. Sure enough, a few people's expressions changed subtly. She memorized all of their characteristics and thus had evidence. According to her observation, the 4th master was quite explosive, and he might have a habit of violence against women. Men, especially men from this kind of place, were sometimes quite complicated. They coveted other people's women, but they also kept a close eye on their own women. How could a brainless and possessive bandit stand the fact that his brothers had played with his women? Based on the man's temper, it was very likely that they would fall out. In conclusion, impulsiveness was the devil. If one went out without a brain, it was best to remember to control his temper. Alright, I'm done. You can rest in peace and go to hell to meet your bandit brothers. Let's have a family reunion. System. You're so kind that you're willing to waste time to let him die in peace. Jiang Pingji, you're wrong. I'm wasting time to let him understand how he died of stupidity. System. F*C, he might as well die in peace. System. Host, are you sure you don't want to find a domineering emperor and have a pure love to save your worldview? She used all the information she could, whether it was deliberately luring people or fooling them. Her goal was very clear. Jiang Pingji's actions from the beginning to the end showed that she had been planning the annihilation of the bandit village since she woke up. Even though they had only worked together for half a day, it was still a little worried about the host. If you keep talking, I'll kill an emperor for you to see. Jiang Pingji frowned impatiently. She was annoyed that there was an uncontrollable noisy sparrow in her head. The system immediately became quiet. At that moment, Tudu Feiqiu, the only spectator who had been silent for a long time, silently sent a bullet screen. Tudu Feiqiu, host, won't it be easy to get out of hand? Jiang Pingji's words could not stand up to scrutiny if she tried to reason it out carefully. If she accidentally went overboard, she would be in deep trouble. But, when he thought about the streamer who was live-streaming murder, his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Host V. This kind of reasoning is a bold speculation, but it needs to be verified carefully. Rather than saying that I had deduced it, it would be better to say that those idiots had said it themselves. As for whether he would go overboard? Otherwise, it would be too boring to be 100% correct. Every time it was like walking on a tightrope. The excitement of falling from heaven to hell with a single misstep was intoxicating. Host V. If you want to deceive your opponent, you have to first deceive yourself. Make people believe that every word you say is as real as gold and silver. Because while you were observing them, they were also observing you. If he was careless, he would be tricked. Jiang Pingji had once met a partner who also liked this kind of evil deduction game. That was the only time she had failed, and then she was tricked by the other party. Later on, she learned her lesson and reflected seriously before she found the cause of her failure. The system, it felt like it had accidentally chosen a psychopathic host. Was she really suited for palace intrigue? Tudu Feiqiu, caught off guard, he felt like he had been taught a lesson by an experienced criminal. With one last stab, Jiang Pingji stepped out of the bloody house. Next, she had more important things to do. Wuxia, what are you trying to do? A group of noble ladies waited anxiously in the back hall. Wei Jingxian and Shangguan Wan were the closest, and they comforted each other as they waited anxiously. Other than the howling of the wind, there was no other sound outside. Not even the footsteps of the bandits and their obscene words could be heard. But they did not dare to go out. Other than enduring the sleepiness, they did not dare to do anything else. It was only when Lu Lanting came to them like a savior and told them that they were safe that they heaved a sigh of relief. However, before they could cry tears of joy, Lu Lanting suggested that they wait somewhere else. It's a little crowded here. Let's go to a bigger place. We've been on tenterhooks all day. It's time for a good rest. The system said. I have a bad feeling. I have goosebumps all over my body. You can't be so kind. Jiang Pingji lowered her head and led the way. Under the night sky, she smiled and gave the system a thumbs up. Not bad. You're quite quick-witted. When the system found out that Jiang Pingji was leading them to the room where the fight had taken place, it was as black as ink. Although the noble ladies thought it was strange, Lu Lanting had saved them and the bandits were drenched in blood. Therefore no one dared to object. They all followed Jiang Pingji anxiously. However, they would soon regret their actions. Before they entered the dark room, the smell of blood assaulted their nostrils and their faces turned pale. When they accidentally stepped on the bandits' broken limbs and slipped, they screamed in fear. Some of them could not help but cry. With a squeak, Jiang Pingji closed the door and lit the oil lamps one after another so that they could see the interior of the room clearly. Then, the screams became louder. If someone were to approach the bandits' hideout and hear the shrill screams, They would most likely think that a group of female ghosts had gathered there. Jiang Pingji glanced at Wei Jingxian and Shangguanwan. Their faces were pale but they still looked calm. She did not say anything to stop them. When they were done screaming, Jiang Pingji played with her dagger and looked at the noble ladies coldly. You should know very well what I want to do. She straightened her messy collar and used the remaining fabric of her cloak to tie her hair behind her head. We're all smart people, so there's no need to be so straightforward. Jiang Pingji had seen Lu Lanting's memories. This era was harsher on women than on men, and she felt that it was not worth it to return to being a woman. Moreover, Lu Lanting had her reasons for dressing up as a man. If she were to be exposed now, it would only bring her trouble. For the sake of safety, Jiang Pingji felt that she had to take this opportunity to talk to them. Are you threatening us? One of the noble ladies asked in disbelief. Yes. Jiang Pingji admitted shamelessly and smiled. If it's not a threat, then are you flirting with us? The women's faces were almost unsightly. The system could not help but facepalm. The one-sided battle was too tragic. Jiang Pingji, if you have the guts to bully little girls, why don't you have the guts to fight in the harem? Chapter 14. But I'm not threatening everyone. I'm threatening all of you except for Jing'er and Wan. They treat me with sincerity unlike you. I just fought a bloody battle to save you and now you're plotting against me. You're biting the hand that feeds you. To put it bluntly, these noble ladies were just girls in their teens. Each and every one of them was very fresh and tender, yet they still wanted to hide their thoughts in front of her. If those young girls could hide their intentions, then the soldiers in the 7th Army would all jump into the river. They were not close and they were not cute when they plotted against her. She did not hesitate to threaten them. When the noble ladies heard this, their faces turned as white as paper, and their delicate bodies were on the verge of collapsing. Aren't you afraid of revenge? One of the noble ladies gritted her teeth. Lu Lanting was different from the bandits. She would never do what bandits did. The noble lady spoke to Jiang Pingji as a member of the gentry. If she was the original Lu Lanting, she would have been afraid. No matter how dirty the gentry's relationship was, they had to treat each other well on the surface. It would be too embarrassing to fall out with them. But Jiang Pingji was not one to fall for that. Revenge? See, that reminds me. She tapped her lips and thought for a while. Do you think I'll stand there like a statue and let you do whatever you want? You have to know that in the eyes of outsiders, you're a noble lady and I'm a young master. You've been raised to take care of your husband and children, while I've learned the ways of Confucius and Mencius. The plots and schemes of the gentry are nothing but demons and monsters. Do you want to use such narrow-minded methods to deal with me? As soon as she said that, the faces of all the noble ladies turned pale. Jiang Pingji had slapped all the noble ladies of the aristocratic families across the face. How dare you humiliate me? The noble lady was so angry that she almost broke her well-groomed nails. You're wrong. Aren't you just asking to be humiliated? Jiang Pingji asked with a smile as she twirled the dagger in her hand. Down below, Shangguanwan blushed. She tugged at Wei Jingxian and whispered, Brother Lanting looks so tall. Wei Jingxian said in annoyance, what she said just now was a slap in the face to all the noble ladies, including you, little love-struck fool. Sticking out her tongue, Shangguanwan twisted her body and said, Wan is also as shrewd as Brother Lanting. Wei Jingxian, you just need to shut up and keep this a secret. Otherwise, once my identity is exposed. Jiang Pingji blew on the dagger and said lazily, a group of noble ladies fell into a bandit's lair and stayed there for a whole night. Sigh, shameless. The hearts of all the girls were filled with the same thoughts. Jiang Pingji's words dealt double the damage to the noble ladies. One of them even rolled her eyes and fainted. Even in the face of bandits, these noble ladies had never experienced such anger. Lu. The system couldn't stand it anymore. You're so cruel to a beauty, can't you be a little more gentle? Jiang Pingji snorted coldly. Although I'm a pitiful beauty fetish, that's just my hobby. When it comes to serious matters, I won't be moved even if thousands of beauties are in front of me. That's because I'm always rational and I won't act on impulse. The system, that's right, you're rational, but do you know that your values and morals are often out of line? I'll give you a choice. Either you shut up or I'll prove it to you. After all the bandits in this room and outside died in my hands. What better proof than that? Your reputation is still as clean as ever. For these noble ladies, clean reputations and family honor were the most important, far more important than their lives. The other one is. She made a gesture to silence them. I can do it. There are many bandits in this wilderness. I could only save Jing'er and Wan'er in time to escape. I believe others won't blame me. Nowadays men like to put on powder on their faces. Incense was the norm, especially in the area of Hejian County, where it was a popular trend. The body that Jiang Pingji was currently using was obviously weak. It was pretty good that it could protect herself and save the two of them. The room was silent. No one dared to breathe loudly. They didn't even dare to cry. The aristocratic families trained these noble ladies not to be brainless. They were trained to obey and smooth out their edges. Some of the noble ladies were even more courageous and knowledgeable than the Confucian scholars. Jiang Pingji's words were not meant to humiliate them but to provoke them. After some time, someone finally couldn't take it anymore. As long as we keep your secret, you're willing to help us? Jiang Pingji's words and actions, as well as the broken limbs in the room, all stimulated the noble ladies. They had a balance in their hearts and they knew how to choose to maximize their benefits. Jiang Pingji's conditions were clear. Even a blind person would know how to choose. And they made their choice. But a noble lady covered her mouth with a handkerchief and said sarcastically, "Your suggestion is excellent. We naturally have no intention of disagreeing. But if your identity is not revealed, will you really marry Wei Jingxian when the wedding date is near?" Oh, she's starting to provoke me? Her method was still a bit immature, but it was effective. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. She had a better impression of the noble lady with a straight back. Judging from the current overwhelming trend, her counterattack could be considered a brilliant move. However, these people didn't know that Jiang Pingji was not only strong and had a sharp tongue, but she was also very good at picking up girls. Why did so many valiant girls in the 7th Army insist on marrying no one but her? Why was it that wherever she was, there was always a high density of single dogs? Bah, they deserved to be single if they were not as good at picking up girls as she was. Wei Jingxian looked at her with a complicated expression. Jiang Pingji responded with a smile. She said every word solemnly like a vow. If she is willing to be wronged and marry me, to be husband and wife for this life, to be conferred the title of Wolf Story Palace, to be a marquis, I will fight for her even if I have to risk my life. If she has other intentions, then I will cup my hands and give her 10 li of red dowry. I will bear the blame of the marriage annulment. I only hope that she and her lover will live together until their hair turns white. When Wei Jingxian heard this, her cheeks reddened beyond belief and her face flushed with embarrassment. You used to look like a decent person. Why is it that, the more you talk about it, the more you talk about it? Is it really like what Wan'er said? Once you reveal your foxtail, you really dare to say anything you want. If you want to marry me, I won't marry you. The noble ladies were speechless. Cold dog food was casually slapped on her face. Can't you find another place to show off your affection? The system said. Let me tell you, host. If you flirt with girls like this, you'll have to take responsibility if they don't marry you. You scumbag. If he didn't marry, why would he flirt? Jiang Pingji innocently asked Wei Jingxian. I'm sorry for hiding it from you for so long. Shouldn't I have done that? At the same time, she replied to the system in her mind, I'll take responsibility. The system. Chapter 15. It was so tiring to be a system. It was so angry to have such an immoral and cruel host. In fact, it was now very suspicious. Would Jiang Pingji really make the emperor's harem her own after entering the harem? It thought of Jiang Pingji wearing the empress's court dress in the future. She would have her wives on her left and the 9 concubines on her right. She would have Jiyu massage her legs, beauties peel grapes for her, and the emperor would be like a spineless quail hiding in a corner, biting on his handkerchief and crying. The system felt bad. The system said, no, you can't keep your identity as a daughter hidden. Otherwise, how can you enter the palace and fight in the harem? Jiang Pingji's eyes darkened. She asked tentatively, is fighting in the harem very important? The system said, I'm a live streaming system of fighting in the harem. Do you know what's important? Otherwise your popularity will. Anyway, the consequences will be serious. At this point, the system's voice quieted down. Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and said, Must it be fighting in the harem? The system said resolutely, yes. It suddenly felt that having a host who was too assertive was not a good thing. It felt irritated. But this has nothing to do with whether or not I return to being a girl. The system was speechless. Did its host want to flirt with girls and be a lesbian, but also be a man and make the emperor gay? Host, you're trying to fly to the sky. Jiang Pingji frowned slightly in the face of the system's wild imagination. There was an indescribable irritability and disgust in her heart. The ancient era was tens of thousands of years away from the era she lived in. Even though she was not very good at culture, she knew that women in the ancient era were sad and pitiful. Was there something wrong with the system's brain to make her one of them? If this was the price of her rebirth, she would rather cut her own throat with a dagger. She'd find whoever it wanted to fight in the harem. Fighting in the harem. Chapter 16. By the way, if the people from the clan haven't found this place by tomorrow morning, I'll take you down the mountain. Also, lock the door and don't let strangers open it. Maybe, some people can't wait for the 7th day, and want come back. Take a look. The temperature in the room seemed to have dropped more than 10 degrees, directly falling below the freezing point. The girls heard Jiang Pingji's weak voice and could not help but scream at the top of their lungs. Listening to the screaming behind her, Jiang Pingji's mood instantly brightened, and she could not stop the smile on the corner of her mouth. Although they are a little scheming, sometimes these girls are really extraordinarily cute. The system said, although I know your values are not online, I think the host is also extraordinarily evil. It had reason to believe that the host would definitely be hated by the noble girls in the room for the rest of her life. The words and actions of the noble girls of the gentry were all cultivated since they were young, and they were real ladies of noble families. However, Jiang Pingji was so evil that she made them lose their manners several times. It would be strange if they did not hate her. People who are occasionally bad are especially lovable, Jiang Pingji said with a look that said, you don't understand. The system. Do you think that everyone has masochistic tendencies? The moon was covered by dark clouds that day and there was no light at all. It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. However, it did not affect Jiang Pingji much. Her night vision had always been good even if the owner of this body had weak myopia, but after the 3% fusion her vision was still better than that of ordinary people. With the coordination of her 5 senses, Jiang Pingji walked in the dark as if she was walking on flat ground. With her rich survival experience in the wild, she quickly found something. She found a bow from the bandits' village and tried it out. The loose bowstring and the simple bow were really not good tools. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, without even aiming, Jiang Pingji pulled out 3 arrows from the quiver, bent the body into a full moon and shot them without hesitation. Listening to the slight sound of the bow and arrow entering the body, it seemed that they all found something. The ancient snake is quite cute, but it's a little small, probably not even enough for 2 mouthfuls. Jiang Pingji praised it from the bottom of her heart. A snake from her era could easily overturn a thatched cottage in this era. At this time 4 white comments floated across the screen. Other than Cultivation, who was scared to death and still refused to move, there were 3 other unfamiliar IDs. They were probably also accidentally clicked into this channel. Lanky Wuxia, it's so dark. I can't see anything at all. Is the host not around? Upstairs, my boyfriend. The introduction of the live stream channel is quite interesting. Xianxia. This channel is so quiet. Is it a new streamer? Cultivation. Yeah, it's a must-watch channel for thrill seekers. The new viewers were all dumbfounded. Wasn't the name of the channel Live Palace Fight? What did it have to do with horror lovers? There were no outsiders around, so Jiang Pingji simply said, can't you see that it's very dark? As soon as he finished speaking, the system silently turned on the infrared panoramic shooting mode so that the audience could watch the scene of Jiang Pingji hunting. However, before the audience could see her heroic posture, they first had to see how she dealt with the venomous snake up close. Every movement was very clear and her speed was not slow at all. She carefully put away the venomous fangs and sacks that had been dealt with. The system bit the bullet and poked Jiang Pingji. You promised me that you would live stream. You should talk and interact with the audience occasionally. She was in a good mood and the system's request did not exceed her bottom line. Jiang Pingji agreed indifferently. Now let's broadcast how to hunt for food in the wild. Jiang Pingji sighed to herself. She had been an instructor before and had experience teaching. I have a beautiful girl in my hand. Jiang Pingji thought to herself. The audience was dumbfounded. The times were too far apart. The biological encyclopedia she had read before was useless, but the laws of evolution were still the same. With her rich experience, she could talk about the toxicity of the beautiful girl and the handsome man in her hands, as well as their preferred living environment. Compared to dealing with their venomous fangs, I actually prefer to show you how to eat them. Their meat is delicious. Privately, the system had already curled up into a ball. It was a harem fight streaming system, not a hegemony streaming system, not a survival streaming system, and definitely not a gourmet streaming system. Before the system could talk about how to judge the age of the snake and how to judge its meat quality, Jiang Pingji frowned and knocked an arrow. My luck is not bad tonight. It's a big one. The girls are in luck, she smiled, and the system could not even cry. In fact, Jiang Pingji's rigid livestream was quite boring, but she had a good body and good looks. She was of a higher standard than the general public. More importantly, the audience was a bunch of night owls who had nothing better to do. They stayed in the channel and hung out. She was lucky and her 5 senses worked well together. Coupled with her rich experience in the wild, she could always quickly find the hiding place of her prey. Half an hour later, she had a good harvest. She carried the prey and prepared to go back. Although all the bandits had died, there was no guarantee that the nearby beasts would not go down the mountain to look for food, or that there would be strangers who accidentally entered the area. Those girls were timid. She would not feel at ease leaving them in the deep mountain bandits' den. Jiang Pingji walked quickly on the flat ground. Even though she was carrying dozens of kilograms of prey, she did not slow down at all. Little did she know that the group of timid girls she had been talking about was experiencing a soul-stirring shock. This day's experience was beyond the imagination of the noble ladies. After exhaustion, everyone had a tired expression on their faces. The strong fire reflected on their pretty faces and they did not talk. Or rather, they did not know what to talk about. The daily activities of the noble ladies were exquisite and elegant. When a few close sisters gathered together, they could talk about the popular cosmetics and fragrances or silk and flower hairstyles. Or they could talk about the poems and songs of the scholars and beauties outside. If that didn't work, they could play a game of poetry. Just like that, a day had passed. But now, a group of people was in a mess. Their stomachs were rumbling with hunger and their stomachs were aching. They could warm themselves with a bonfire when it was cold, but they could not suppress the hunger in their stomachs. A noble lady who was about the same age as Shangguanwan pouted, and her stomach rumbled inelegantly. I'm so hungry, Wan Xiu comforted her in a low voice. Didn't Lu Shi say that he's going out to hunt? He should be back soon. Just bear with it. But she's a bully. She had been scary before she left, and now she thought that a ghost had come when she heard the slightest movement. Shangguanwan was drawing and writing beside the fire pit with firewood. When she heard this, she could not help but raise her head to refute. When you're hungry, you think of Brother Lanting. Why don't you think about how dangerous it is outside in the middle of the night? Wei Jingxian discreetly tugged at her sleeve, indicating that Shangguanwan should not provoke them too much. Chapter 17. The noblewoman's cheeks turned red and she stammered, How dangerous can it be outside? Although Shangguanwan had a sweet tongue and could be coaxed by anyone, there was another side to her. She could also be sharp with her words. If it's not dangerous, why don't you go out and try? You don't have to go far. Just carry a few pieces of firewood from the door. Shangguanwan's words made the little girl speechless. She did not dare to go out and carry firewood. Wan Xiu became the peacemaker when she saw that they were arguing. Stop it. Can't you both take a step back and give in to each other? Everyone was frightened today. Who wouldn't be hungry? I'll carry the firewood from the door. Jiang Pingji had been gone for half an hour, which was a little more than a quarter of an hour. In such a short time, the firewood that had been carried in earlier had been burned to the ground by them. If she did not go out and bring in more firewood, the bonfire might be extinguished in a while. The wooden bolt on the door was a little heavy. Wan Xiu moved it with the help of another noblewoman. She opened the door with both hands and carefully closed it. She ran from the hot room to the cold night wind outside. Wearing a spring gown, she could not help but shiver a few times. She tried hard to suppress the creepy feeling. After searching for a while, she frowned and picked up a few thick pieces of firewood. Love, go little, said Net when she straightened up and was about to enter the house with the firewood. She vaguely saw a few blurry shadows moving at the entrance of the village. In an instant, a huge chill ran from the soles of her feet to her whole body. If she had not encountered so many things that day, she would have fainted from fear. She was so scared that she could not move her legs. She suppressed her fear and secretly bit her tongue. She used the pain to get rid of the nervousness and fear she had just felt. She did not dare to directly scatter the firewood in her arms. What if the sound attracted the ghost? Then the noble ladies saw Xian enter the room with a pale face and trembling gums. After entering, she quickly stuffed the firewood into the arms of the noblewoman closest to her. Before the noblewoman could react, she closed the door with both hands. Hey, quick, bring the door bolt over. Outside. There's a ghost outside, she said it almost in tears. Hearing this, the noblewomen who were still sleepy were instantly startled awake. They hurriedly moved the wooden bolts and bolted the door. Phantom shadow? Don't tell me. Lu Lanting was right? Thinking of the other party's restless words before he left, the group of noble ladies felt their hearts beating violently, as if they were about to jump out of their throats. Isn't her mouth quite sharp? Perhaps it was true. Otherwise, how did those thieves? How did they die? But, should we put out the fire? Isn't this light a little too eye-catching? Aren't ghosts afraid of light? If we put out the fire and they come in through the door, what will we do? At this time, even if there were noble ladies who were unhappy with Zhang Pingji, they hoped that she would return as soon as possible. However, what they were worried about still happened. The shadow on the paper window was getting closer and closer. Even the most cowardly of them knew to bite their own hands. No matter how scared they were, they could not make a sound. Outside the house, the group of people who had been mistaken for ghosts were also extremely embarrassed. They were even more embarrassed than the noblewomen in the house. There's a village deep in the mountains. Let's take forth Langjun there to rest and ask if there's a barefoot doctor. Their clothes were messy and their hair was crooked. The weapons in their hands were stained with blood and many of them were injured. Although it was rare for a barefoot doctor to be found in a small village like this, they were at the end of their rope. In order to avoid being hunted down, they had mistakenly entered the mountains for 2 days. Fourth Master was injured and had caught a cold. He was unconscious from the fever, so they could only rely on their luck. However, when they followed the light to the door of the village, their expressions changed. You guys go check it out first. There was only one house in the village that was abnormally bright, and it was so quiet that not even the crowing of chickens or the barking of dogs could be heard. In a village like this, there would always be hunters and hunting dogs were a must. How could it be so quiet when it sensed strangers approaching? The young man's mind was spinning. The 2 guards who had been sent out returned quickly, and the contents of the report made him pale. Feng Langjun, I'm afraid this is not a normal village. It's a bandit stronghold. All the bandits have been killed, and the time of their deaths is estimated to be less than 2 hours. The culprit is very strong and his method of killing is frighteningly simple. The young man called Feng Langjun pursed his lips. He looked at Fourth Master who was being carried and quickly asked, Is there someone in the main house? Yes, and quite a lot of them. Could it be the bandits? The young man licked his dry, pale and chapped lips and made a prompt decision. Go knock on the door. Remember, don't scare the people in the house. The guard did not hesitate and did as he was told. Then someone knocked on the door in the middle of the night. A group of noble women huddled under the door and pressed against it. They clenched their fists and were all thinking about Zhang Pingji. No one answered. The guard turned around and Feng Langjun nodded at him, gesturing for him to continue knocking. Finally someone answered, but the voice was unexpected. It was a slightly hoarse girl's voice. Of course, Wei Jingxian spoke with a pinched voice, but the people outside were knowledgeable and could tell that her voice was unnatural. Is that person outside a human or a ghost? Wei Jingxian tried hard to imagine how Zhang Pingji had tricked the bandits to calm herself down. It seemed like there was no danger. Feng Longjuan's furrowed brows slowly relaxed. Of course it's a living person. Don't be afraid. We are a group of merchants who accidentally entered the mountains and got lost. My Langjun was injured and caught a cold. Now he has a high fever. I wonder if you can help us? Man. The noble women looked at each other and shook their heads at Wei Jingxian. They could not let him in. At home. My husband is out hunting and I'm the only one left, with a few of my close friends who came to visit a few days ago. It's late at night and you and I are a single man and a single woman. It's really inconvenient. My husband will be back soon, and to avoid any misunderstandings, I hope you can find another place to stay. I will be very grateful. Feng Langjun raised his eyebrows and pursed his lips into a thin line. His eyes flashed with something. Inside the house, Shangguanwan looked at Wei Jingxian nervously and whispered, "Will you scare them away by saying that? There are corpses of bandits killed by Lanting outside. They said they were a group of merchants, so they must have seen a lot of things. They should be able to tell that there's something strange about the corpses. I said that Lanting will be back soon. If they aren't stupid, they won't dare to force their way in even if they don't leave." As soon as she finished speaking, Shangguanwan looked at her in surprise. The other noble women also looked as if they had expected it. Chapter 18. A bandit village with corpses all over the ground. The killer was clean and cruel. A young girl in the house said that her husband would be returning soon. This implied that her husband was the one who had killed all the bandits. In other words, he was being threatened by a girl. After some thought, Feng Langjun cupped his hands and said, "If that's the case, I won't make things difficult for you. It's just that it's hard to travel at night. We've been lost in the forest for 2 days. Not only did we lose our goods, but we've also lost a few servants. If we continue..." Wei Jingxian gritted her teeth. Did he not intend to leave? However, it was more important to stall for time. Lanting might already be on the way, so she had to stall them for now. She rolled her eyes and made a decision. She pinched her throat and said, "If that's the case, please go ahead, young master." Although it was a bandit village full of corpses, it was much better than camping in the forest. The guards did not stand on ceremony. They picked up some firewood and were about to start a fire when they realized that they did not have anything to start a fire with. They had lost all their flint and the match had been soaked in water. Were they going to start a fire by drilling wood? She turned to look at the light reflected from the paper window. She would not be rejected if she wanted to borrow a fire, would she? "Madam, may I borrow a fire?" Wei Jingxian pursed her lips. Was he still not giving up? If there were guards around, she would agree. However, there was only a nest of weak girls. They had been frightened by the bandits during the day and would subconsciously be afraid of anyone of the opposite sex. Why would they open the door for a stranger? They had finally escaped from danger. For the sake of their safety and reputation, they would not open the door even if they had to barge in. "My husband will be back soon. Why don't you wait a little longer? Otherwise, if my husband pursues the matter, I'm afraid I'll be in trouble." Wei Jingxian closed her eyes nervously. Why wasn't he back yet? At that moment, Feng Langjun crossed his arms in front of his chest and asked with a smile, "An unmarried girl calling a man husband. Aren't you afraid of ruining your reputation?" Wei Jingxian subconsciously gasped. She quickly reacted and covered her mouth with both hands. She had been tricked. Win gentleman narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. The guard understood and wanted to force his way in. On the other side, Jiang Pingji returned with her prey, but the relaxed expression on her face did not last long. It was quickly replaced by a grave expression. The system said, "What's wrong, host? There are footsteps of strangers and the footprints are still fresh. They weren't left by the bandits from before. That group of people all headed in the direction of the bandits' stronghold. There's human blood on the ground and some of them are injured, but their injuries shouldn't be serious. Judging from the depth of the footprints, these people don't seem to be in good condition. There are 6 pairs of footprints, so there should be 7 people. Jing and the others are still in the bandit stronghold. Oh no, I have to go back quickly." Jiang Pingji's pupils constricted, and a series of messages popped up in her mind. She hastened her pace. "Lan Chui Yubuja. Host, are you right? 6 pairs of footprints and 7 people? One of the footprints is of medium size, so it doesn't seem to belong to a fat person. However, the footprints are the deepest, so there should be another person on his back. I think 2 of them are injured in the arms and the other one is injured in the legs. Wu Jiang Zhakai Yi. Am I the only one who thinks this host is cute? But it's nighttime and it's pitch black. I know you have good night vision and that's proven in the last half an hour. But you only took 1 look. How can you tell these things? Tudu Feichio. This host has a glib tongue. Whatever she says is true. Guys, trust me. It's obvious. There's nothing to brag about. Jiang Pingji rushed back like the wind and took the time to reply. As she approached the bandits' stronghold, she saw a group of 7 people outside the house with a bonfire. Jiang Pingji drew her bow and knocked an arrow as she ran. Whoosh. If I were you, I wouldn't be so reckless. If you don't want to die, get out of that house. Before the guard could get close to the door, the sound of an arrow piercing through the air was heard, and it almost grazed the tip of his nose. Feng Longjuan's expression froze, and Jiang Pingji had already knocked a second arrow. He sneered. If you don't do as I say, the next arrow will be aimed at the pampered Langjun on your back. Now do as I say and get out of that house. The position of the bandits revealed everything. The most important thing was the guy being carried on her back in the skinny bamboo pole. Unlike the group outside the house, the noble ladies in the house were so happy that they almost cried tears of joy. It had been a tough time. Jinga, how are you guys in the house? Are these guys still behaving themselves? Wei Jingxian had been pinching her throat to speak and it was still itchy. She coughed and adjusted her voice to respond loudly. Lanting, the young master outside the house, didn't do anything offensive. He just wanted to come in and borrow a light, but I didn't have time to respond. Jiang Pingji sneered. There were still people who dared to come forward without a response. Looked like they wanted to bully the girls by forcing their way in. Hearing Wei Jingxian's reply, Feng Langjun felt a headache coming on. That was a really subtle complaint. He cupped his hands in front of his chest and apologized to Jiang Pingji. It was a misunderstanding. We didn't mean to offend your wife. It's just that it's late at night and we wanted to borrow a light. We hope that your wife can help us. We don't want to be misunderstood. Hypocrites. Who wouldn't be wary of a bunch of weirdly dressed guys knocking on someone's door in the middle of the night? It's just borrowing a light. There might be something like flint in the other houses. You can find it yourself. Why are you guys scaring my wife outside the house? Jiang Pingji shamelessly took advantage of the situation and ridiculed them. Jiang Pingji held her bow in one hand and her prey in the other. A bunch of dead snakes were wrapped around the hoof of the wild boar. Young Master Feng saw her appearance with the help of the fire. A trace of doubt flashed through his clear eyes, and then he raised his eyebrows. My husband. Jiang Pingji sized him up and instantly came to a conclusion. He had some brains and his fighting ability was on par with Lu Lanting's. Apart from his brain, he was a good-for-nothing who posed no threat. But Jiang Pingji frowned. She knew that he had figured out her gender, but he was still mocking her? Jiang Pingji smirked. She looked at the young man with a flirtatious expression and retorted. Young Master's appearance is indeed splendid, a feast for the eyes, but you haven't washed for 7 days and you've been chased for thousands of miles. You must have been trembling with fear these past few days, unable to care about your dignity. Although the incense on your body is precious, the smell is indeed rather suffocating. Even if young master can't wait to offer himself to sleep with you, please burn the incense and take a bath first. Feng Langjun was speechless. Wasn't it said that Hejian County was a place full of geniuses, gentle and gentle? A lady from a wealthy family like a female insect? Seeing his Langjun being teased by a young man, the loyal guards could not help but draw their swords, but Feng Langjun raised his hand to stop them. Don't be rude. All of you back off. Judging by her clothes, she was not a farmer or a hunter. Why would she be there in the middle of the night and why was she so skilled? Could it be that on the 3rd day of the 3rd month, a group of geniuses had come out for a stroll in the spring? Jiang Pingji was not interested in his behavior. She approached the door and knocked. Jinger, it's me. Go get a torch from the bonfire and pass it to me when you open the door. Feng Langjun cupped his hands in gratitude. Thank you, Jiang Pingji smiled wickedly. It's too early to thank me. I need the torch to boil water and prepare the food. Chapter 19. Facts had proven that even if she was a lady disguised as a man, she was still a lady with a kind heart. Feng Langjun sighed inwardly as he shamelessly moved closer to Jiang Pingji's campfire to keep warm. A group of guards carefully made a simple bed on the ground. The group of people was orderly. How did they look like a normal merchant group? The ground was very humid. Fourth Langjun, who had caught a cold, could not stand it at all. He could only try his best to bring him closer to the fire. Jiang Pingji noticed that the thin bamboo was looking at her. She couldn't help but smile coldly. She hoped that his brain would work better. Feng Langjun looked at her with interest, but his heart was full of doubts. How should I address you, Langjun? My surname is Liu. Jiang Pingji killed the wild boar in no time. She dug out its heart and threw out its intestines in front of the group of strangers. Even though she was careful, her clothes were still stained with the wild boar's dirty blood. Of course, the smell was even worse. It wasn't something that those pampered young masters and noble ladies could endure. Feng Langjun sniffed the indescribable scent in the air and frowned. He ordered 2 guards to help her. I remember that the Liu family in Hejin County seems to have a child who is about the same age as you. Could it be you? Since you've already seen through it, why bother probing further? Jiang Pingji responded snappily. Wei Jingxian's dagger was coated with poison, so it couldn't be used to deal with wild animals. Fortunately, although this bandit stronghold was small, it had all the necessary things such as pots, bowls, ladles and other things, and even some spices that could add flavor. Thus, the content of the live broadcast jumped from wilderness survival to wilderness barbecue. The system was already playing dead. I know you're smart. I hope you're as smart as you look and know how to weigh the pros and cons. The corner of Feng Longjuan's mouth twitched. Was this a threat to keep his mouth shut? Interesting. A noblewoman disguised as a man to confuse the public and deceive the world? The number of viewers in the channel had silently risen to 10. Bullet comments flashed across the screen from time to time, and Jiang Pingji also selected some to answer in secret. When she set up the homemade barbecue rack, she cut out the bamboo skewers as if she was performing a magic trick. Then she skewered the washed meat slices together. The style of the entire live broadcast room changed. What was even more amazing was that she even personally explained how to make snake soup. Mary Sue's love. #laughter cry. The style of this live broadcast is so magical. Isn't there supposed to be a harem fight? Tudu Feichio. Am I the only one who noticed that the skinny Shota that the streamer mentioned had a dumbfounded look on his face? Lon Chue Yubuja. I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, so I came over to hang out. I was also forcefully recommended some delicious food. Wujiang Jacquet. I think I can hear a series of F***king comments in their hearts. Nong Hao Shui. #perverted. Didn't you notice that these guards have good figures? That young Shota is also very good looking. Jiang Pingji looked at the last bullet screen and replied seriously in her heart. Streamer V. They haven't bathed for at least 7 days. They ran and got injured. They're not clean, so they'll get sick from licking. The few people who were chatting on the bullet screen were speechless. Then a few strings of 66666666666 flew by in the next second. Jiang Pingji's barbecue skills were as good as her verbal skills. However, she didn't overcook the meat and add some seasoning. Of course, considering that the taste of the noble girls was mild, she didn't add too much. She knocked on the door and said, Jing, open the door and bring these in. Remember to put them on the fire and roast them. The wooden lock on the door moved and the tightly closed door creaked open a small gap. Not a bit of skirt could be seen. Where did you come from? Why do you smell so bad? Jiang Pingji opened the door slightly and took a skewer of barbecue from her. The noble girls thought it was fresh, but they still had a good eye. They could tell at a glance that it was the best and most tender part of the wild boar. It was a good balance of fat and lean, and the fragrance of the meat permeated the air. How can I not stink after carrying a wild boar back? I'll just find a place to wash it later. The snake soup is still cooking outside. I'll bring it to you later to keep you warm so you don't catch a cold. Right now there's a sick person with a cold outside. Jiang Pingji chatted with Wei Jingxian as if there was no one else around. She didn't care about the faces of the others at all. Is the cold? Is it serious? I don't think they'll die, but they seem to be chased by their enemies. They don't have the conditions to take good care of them. As long as they don't catch a cold and warm themselves, they'll probably recover after a few days of relapse. It was someone else's business. Why should they care about it? They wouldn't even look at the coarse barbecue on normal days, but they were starving and found it unusually delicious. The barbecue was too hot, so they ate it carefully. They were starving, but they still had to worry about their manners when eating. They would get tired of eating too much meat, and they probably weren't used to this kind of eating habit. Jiang Pingji took out a dried mushroom and a few pieces of ginger from the bandit's kitchen. After making sure they weren't poisonous, she added some chopped green onions and cooked a pot of light soup. She even washed the clay bowls that were used to serve the soup. After all, the bandits used them. She had to take care of the girl's mysophobia into consideration. The system, who was pretending to be dead, muttered, "I didn't expect the host to be so meticulous. You have the demeanor of a virtuous wife." It felt that maybe it didn't have to give up so early. Look, Jiang Pingji actually had the attributes of a virtuous wife. She could hunt when she went out and cook when she returned home. Only with pretty and cute girls. I don't have the same patience for others. System. Actually, a Shota can also be very pretty and cute. But the gender is wrong. System, you're the one with the wrong gender. Jiang Pingji wasn't that meticulous with herself. Most of the wild boar meat was coarse, so the most tender and delicious parts were roasted. She simply roasted some for herself. She had good teeth, so it wasn't like she couldn't chew through the meat. The audience watching the whole stream was a little confused, especially when they were informed that the streamer with the max boyfriend power was a 12-year-old girl. Or a loli. So, there was a viewer who seemed to be a girl who directly criticized her boyfriend on the bullet screen. Koi AI na fox. Your boyfriend power can't even compare to a girl? Trash. What use do I have you? The Prince Charming of the people, Jiang Pingji, took a peek at the bullet screen as she chewed on the fragrant roasted meat. She smirked. She poked the system and said proudly, "Back in the day, many animals in the 7th Army became single because of me." Chapter 20. Jiang Pingji did not enter the house to rest. Instead, she chose to stay outside and watch the night. With her body, it would not be a problem for her to be out in the cold for a whole night. She could also keep an eye on the group of people with unknown origins. If she did this, the maids inside would probably be able to sleep more peacefully. Jiang Pingji hugged her knees and sat by the bonfire. She added some wood from time to time to keep the fire burning. "Why are you staring at me like that?" She raised her eyebrows and smiled, facing the thin bamboo pole who had to maintain a proper sitting posture even in the wilderness. Even though he was caught red-handed, Feng Langjun did not seem embarrassed at all. Instead, he smiled in return. "I'm just curious. How did Lu Langjun come to this place?" Jiang Pingji snorted and fiddled with the firewood in her hand. She smiled faintly and said, "Can't you see that this is a bandit's lair? Naturally, they were captured by thieves. Otherwise, who would come here to enjoy the night breeze when there are soft beds and pillows at home?" Feng Langjun couldn't help but choke. If he had really been kidnapped, how did he manage to kill off a group of bandits? This is out of my expectations. However, the bandits were fierce. How did Lu Langjun manage to kill all of them? Jiang Pingji said indifferently, "You have a body full of strength, but your brain is full of idiots. Just a few words of provocation and you'll be in a mess." The more casual her explanation was, the more confused Feng Langjun became. His curiosity grew and he desperately wanted to find out the truth. "My guards have seen the appearance of those thieves. There are indeed signs of them killing each other, but I don't know what kind of trick you used." It wasn't difficult to sow discord, but it wasn't easy to make a bunch of perverted bandits temporarily give up on beauty. Moreover, apart from the corpses of the envoys, the other bandits all died the same way. Their throats were slit from behind and they died almost immediately. Not even much blood was spilled. If it weren't for the fact that the corpse was ice cold, it would look like it was still alive. If a few words could make a large bandit's lair turn into a mess and brothers kill each other, then there wouldn't be so many bandits in Hejian County. Of course, if what Jiang Pingji said was true, then it could be seen that Lu Langjun was very capable. This knowledge made the youth somewhat concerned. He had always believed that apart from a few people of his age, no one could make him suffer a loss. Plan to deal with a bunch of idiots. All I did was tear off the cloth covering their shame and provoke them with a few words. Yet they actually obediently followed my instructions step by step. They're seeking their own deaths. They're simply foolish beyond compare. Feng Langjun looked at Jiang Pingji's dirty face and continued to ask, "What did Lu Langjun say?" Since he was so persistent in asking, Jiang Pingji was bored of keeping watch at night. She might as well tell him the truth to kill time. Unexpectedly, as soon as Jiang Pingji finished speaking, the youth's expression became indescribably strange. Jiang Pingji said nonchalantly, "Those people died because of their own stupidity. As for those who didn't have the time to be stupid, I killed them myself." Feng Langjun seemed to have woken up from a dream. He looked at Jiang Pingji with a complicated expression. He leaned forward and cupped his hands. Lu Langjun, you are very smart. I am ashamed. It's just something obvious. It's not worth bragging about. Jiang Pingji did not know how to be humble. He surprised the other. Looking at the burning bonfire, the thin bamboo pole suddenly pointed to himself. I don't know what Lu Langjun can see from this one. Jiang Pingji did not understand. The atmosphere had been good. Why did the young man suddenly start to provoke her? While she was confused, a few comments popped up on the bullet screen to answer her questions. Tudu Feichio, #laughter cry. This young man is cute. I didn't expect him to be at Sundra. Mary Sue's love, #laughter cry +1. The streamer is telling the truth. The young man misunderstood the streamer's provocation. My heart aches for him. Lan Chui Yubuja, heart aches +2 Wu Jiang Zhakai Yi, heart aches +3 Jiang Pingji also realized that her words had caused the young man to misunderstand. In this era, even if you were so arrogant that you wanted to roll on the ground, you still had to maintain a humble demeanor. Otherwise, people would think that you were too arrogant and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Although she knew that it was caused by cultural differences, Jiang Pingji did not intend to explain. Instead, she looked the young man up and down. She thought for a while and slowly asked, although you are young, you have a strong will. Sometimes you will do whatever it takes to achieve your goals. The skinny man waited for a while, but he did not hear anything else. He could not help but feel disappointed. That's it? It was just a very ordinary comment. It could be used on anyone. It was disappointing. At that moment, Jiang Pingji suddenly curled her lips. Tudu Feichio, I think the streamer is going to use her ultimate move. Warning ahead. As soon as the bullet screen popped up, Jiang Pingji suddenly asked, so, how much of that bowl of dog meat did you eat? The skinny man's hands suddenly froze. He turned his head to look at Jiang Pingji in disbelief. What did you say? You have a dog that is no taller than your calf. It clings to you and you like it very much. It brings you a lot of joy. The skinny man looked as if he had seen a ghost. Jiang Pingji said unhurriedly, you are not the eldest son of the family. Although you are favored by the elders, you have a capable older brother in front of you and an intelligent younger brother behind you. It is inevitable that you are overlooked. This dog has secretly accompanied you for many years. This time you brought it along with you, but unexpectedly, you encountered an emergency and had no choice but to kill it to appease your hunger. On the side, the guards who seemed to be on night watch all pricked up their ears, wanting to hear the gossip about Feng Langjun. Other than that, you love incense. You have to use it every day to cover up the dog's smell. You treat the dog so well, so it is clear that you have a good relationship with it. But in the end, you were able to kill it to appease your hunger. Isn't that what you mean by, you are determined to achieve your goals at all costs? Jiang Pingji smiled. Seriously, why did she need to explain? It would only add insult to injury. The skinny bamboo boy seemed to have been unmasked, his face turned green and red and finally fixed on a pale white. I am impressed, but how did Lu Langjun see through it? It is obvious. If you look closely, you will always find clues. Jiang Pingji was still not humble. The system said, I won't be surprised if someone puts a gunny sack on you and beats you to death one day. This was definitely not the host it had chosen. Absolutely not. The skinny man laughed bitterly. He did not feel the gentleness of the noble ladies in Hejian, but it was true that they all held grudges. Jiang Pingji warmed herself by the fire for a while, then turned to the young man and asked, do you have any clean clothes? Borrow some for an emergency. The young man was stunned at first, then his cheeks turned red. He lowered his voice and said, aren't you afraid of losing your chastity? Chapter 21. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and said nonchalantly, you and I are both men and we had a pleasant conversation before. If that's the case, we can be considered to have some friendship. I'm just borrowing a set of clothes and I'll return it when the time comes. When the sun rises and the servants of the clan come to find me, wouldn't it be rude of me to look like this? In order to protect Wei Jingxian, Lu Lanting had been stabbed by a bandit. Perhaps she was lucky, but Lu Lanting was not seriously injured. However, her collar had been slashed and the band around her chest had loosened. Her hairpin was nowhere to be found. If she were to encounter the servants who came looking for her, they would see through her disguise as a girl. In comparison, it wasn't a big deal for a young man to borrow a set of clothes from another young man he could get along with. The youth had obviously thought of this problem as well, but his ears were still a little red. He asked the guards to find a clean set of clothes for Jiang Pingji. The daring noblewoman didn't care, but as a gentleman he couldn't ruin her reputation. Fortunately, when he left home, his parents ordered the servants to prepare many new clothes, most of which he had never worn before. He had lost a lot of them when he was being chased, but he should still have a few sets with him. Jiang Pingji thanked him. The youth was taller than her but not much fatter. His clothes fit him well. Lan Chui Yu Buja. Oh, is the host going to broadcast bathing in the open air? Tudu Feichio. I don't think it's going to be a live broadcast. It's very likely that it's going to be shut down. That's right, how is that possible? Host V. Today's broadcast will be very long. Everyone, please pay attention to this channel. There will be a notification when the broadcast starts. After saying that, she told the system to turn off the live broadcast. Looks like live streaming isn't that difficult after all. However, it felt weird to be watched no matter what he did. The system said, "Please don't call what you just did a live broadcast. I think I need some time alone." With such a host, it felt that its life in the system was already a salted fish. It didn't even need to think about live streaming popularity. The bandits' stronghold deep in the mountain was still quiet, and they didn't know that Hejian County was in chaos outside. Every family that had lost their daughters sent their servants and maids into the mountains to search for them through the night. When the prefect in charge of this area received the news, he was so scared that he lost 2 of his 3 souls. He didn't even have time to tidy up his clothes before he led his men out to search for them. What a joke. Hejian County was not a big place, but there were a lot of noble ladies. He couldn't afford to offend any of them. Originally, every family wanted to suppress the news. Otherwise, if the outside world knew that their daughters had been kidnapped by bandits, how would their reputations be? Even if they found them, they had spent a night in the bandits' lair. Even their closest relatives didn't dare to hope that they were still pure. It was just that this matter was too big. The news of the noble lady being kidnapped flew to every household like it had grown wings. It was impossible to suppress it even if one wanted to. As time passed, they still did not manage to rescue the kidnapped noblewoman. They did not even know where the bandits' lair was. When the sky gradually brightened, everyone's mood sank to the bottom. An unmarried woman losing her virginity before marriage was not a death sentence, but it was not a trivial matter either. When it came to the age of marriage, the best result would be to find a son of a concubine or a son of a poor family. As for whether the husband's family would use this matter to bully the bride after marriage, there was no doubt at all. Of course, the noble ladies who couldn't stand this kind of grievance could only choose to be a nun and live the rest of their lives in seclusion. The sun was hanging high in the sky and there was fog rising in the deep mountains. The servants who stayed up all night to look for her complained secretly. In order not to waste time, they didn't even dare to blink their eyes. They shouted until their throats were hoarse, but they couldn't even drink water. Their stomachs were rumbling with hunger, and their legs were so swollen that they couldn't even move. The dense forest was very humid. Their clothes were soaked with the morning dew and now half of their bodies were wet. Alas, the eldest lady has been missing for a day. I don't know how she is now. I heard that the old lady almost fainted when she heard the news. A servant lowered his head to search while talking to his companion in a low voice. If it was in normal times, he would not dare to talk about the noble lady. But now it was different. She has fallen into the hands of the bandits. What else can she do? Now she only hopes that she is still alive. But the bandits are vicious, I'm afraid. The servant disagreed, but I heard that there are a lot of bandits. I'm afraid that after this night, it's better to just go like this. Bah! How dare you say such rebellious words? If others hear it, they will cut your mouth off. Although the latter sternly rebuked and stopped them from his expression, he actually agreed with the other servant's words. Hey, wait a minute. Look over there, isn't there smoke? Smoke? Where's there smoke? It's deep in the forest. Except for those bandits, who else can? Before he finished his words, the 2 servants opened their eyes wide. Although they were not sure whether it was the lair of bandits, it was better to try to find the location of the smoke than to search aimlessly for a whole night without any clues. Even if it was not the lair of bandits, it might be the hunters who lived here all year round. Hejian County was high in the mountains and deep in the forest. The terrain was complicated. Without a guide it was easy to get lost. On the other side, Jiang Pingji had already boiled some hot water. She asked the noble ladies to wash their faces and tidy up their appearances. Feng Langjun watched as the guards gathered all the firewood they could and tried their best to make the bonfire burn brightly. He glanced at Jiang Pingji, who looked rather handsome, and teased her. Lu Langjun is quite smart. You know how to use the smoke to warn me. I pity my guards. Jiang Pingji did not even look at him. She said, you were also lost in the mountains for a few days. Don't you want to take this opportunity to get out? The people who were attracted by the smoke were all looking for us, not Huayu. The skinny boy next to her had the surname Feng, and his first name was Jean. His courtesy name was Huayu. It had been almost a day and a night, but the missing noble ladies had not been found. Jiang Pingji was very worried. She despised the efficiency of finding people in this era. If she did not take the initiative to guide them, she did not know how long it would take. She had wanted to bring the noble ladies down the mountain, but it was too time-consuming and risky. Although the beasts in this era were a group of mini cuties to her, it was undeniable that they were aggressive. Jiang Pingji could do it with ease, but how could those spoiled girls protect themselves? Not to mention that the road was rugged and dangerous. Not everyone could walk on it like she did. Chapter 22. We provide you with exciting novels to read. They knew what Jiang Pingji wanted them to do. If their family followed the smoke and found that the kidnapped noble ladies were listless and disheveled, they would definitely let their imagination run wild. When they went back to explain, even if they proved that they were innocent, there would still be people who would slander them in private. Jiang Pingji looked into the distance and suddenly said, those useless things have finally found us. How did you know? The sky was bright and Feng Jin could see Jiang Pingji's face clearly. He had to admit that he had been lucky to be able to see through her disguise last night. Jiang Pingji had changed into a new set of clothes and tied her hair up. She looked like a delicate and elegant young man. The birds over there are panicking, and they're approaching us. It's very likely that they're the guards. Jiang Pingji said with certainty, but she felt a little regretful. If it were her old self, she would have been able to see the shadows moving in the distance. If she had the help of tools, she would have been able to see further. Unfortunately, Lu Lanting's body was not strong enough, so she could only judge from the birds. Feng Jin thought about it and asked, then, should I and my guards stay away for a while? All of them were men. Even though Jiang Pingji was also a man, and had stayed outside the house the whole night, she was still considered a stranger. If someone used this to slander the noble ladies, it would damage their reputation. Jiang Pingji thought about it and nodded in agreement. I didn't think it through. I'm sorry, Huayu. That was how harsh the ancient times were. Jiang Pingji's good mood turned gloomy when she thought about it. Which family do you belong to? Jiang Pingji asked. Seeing that Feng Jin and the others had moved away, Jiang Pingji appeared in front of the guards. After searching for a whole night, everyone was tired and hungry. The leader of the guards, a plump middle-aged man, wiped his sweat and tried his best to identify them. You are? Lu Langjun. Everyone knew that other than the missing girls, the second son of the Lu family, Lu Lanting, was also there. He widened his eyes and realized that the handsome young man standing in front of him was none other than the Lu family's Langjun, who had been missing for a day and a night. I'm the steward of the Wei mansion. The slightly plump man raised his hand and wiped his sweat with his sleeve. His eyes were bloodshot from staying up all night. Peng had finally found someone, but now he was so anxious that he was about to cry. My wife and Lu Langjun were kidnapped. Langjun. The housekeeper of the Wei Manor was about to grab Jiang Pingji's hands, but he quickly figured out what was strange. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, so it's Jinger's housekeeper. Don't worry, your wife is fine. How can you make fun of me at a time like this? The steward didn't seem to believe her. Come with me. Jinger and the others are safe. They were just a little frightened and need to rest for a few days. Jiang Pingji glanced at the tired servants behind her and suppressed the urge to ridicule them. The steward of the Wei Manor knew that Lu Lanting and Wei Jingxian were engaged, and the two families had frequent interactions. Even though he was an inconspicuous steward, he could recognize Lu Lanting's face. But for some reason he felt that the situation was a little strange. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to find them, so I lit a bonfire for the whole day. When I saw the birds in the forest being startled, I knew that someone was coming. Even though they looked pitiful, their efficiency was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Jing and the ladies from the other manors are in that room. But for the sake of your reputation, send the maids in. Jiang Pingji calmly stepped into the bandits' hideout. The steward and the servants behind her almost fell flat on their faces. To maximize the effect, Jiang Pingji asked Feng Jin's guards to help move the bandits' corpses out to dry on the ground. The corpses were piled up in a mess. The blood on their bodies had already dried up, so everyone who entered could see the spectacular scene. Lu Langjun, the steward was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. He looked at Lu Lanting, who was calm and silent with fear in his eyes. Could it be that his wife had already been killed a long time ago and the Lu Langjun in front of him was also a malicious spirit? But just like the other noble ladies, she was filled with resentment and turned into a malicious spirit that night, killing all the bandits who had harmed them. That was why the current scene was happening. Those bandits, those audacious fellows, they should pay for their actions. For example, losing their lives or something. Jiang Pingji did not turn around. She casually answered, but she noticed that the people behind her had stopped. Why are you all looking at me like that? The steward looked like he was about to collapse. He lay on the ground and cried, Lu Lang, you died so unjustly, Jiang Pingji secretly complained in her heart. I don't really understand the brain structure and circuitry of ancient humans. The system said, no. Maybe they were just misled by you and were scared out of their wits. No one doubted the fate of the kidnapped noble ladies. Even if they were still searching, they were mentally prepared to find a bunch of corpses. Some of the families had even started to prepare for their funeral. But what happened? Not only did Jiang Pingji appear in clean clothes, but there was also a pile of bandits' corpses in the den. Was that not scary? Wei Jingxian heard the familiar voice of the steward and almost cried with joy. It's the steward from the manor. They found us. What a bunch of useless people. If Brother Lanting had not lit the bonfire outside for so long, who knows when they would have found us? Sheng Wanwan pouted angrily. Maybe they would have waited for the weeds on their graves to grow 3 feet high. What nonsense are you talking about? Who taught you to say such nonsense? Wei Jingxian stopped her from spouting nonsense. It's inauspicious. Not long after, the stewards and servants of other families came to find them. They all had the same reaction when they saw the pile of corpses. The sun in the sky was warm and they were wearing quite a lot of clothes, but there was a strange feeling of coldness that seeped into their bones. Jiang Pingji waited for half a day. The families of the other noblewomen had all arrived. Even the Hejian county chief had crawled up the stairs with the help of his servants. Lu Lanting's family was nowhere to be found. That was strange. These are the bandits who were killed. The governor of Hejian county wiped his sweat and breathed heavily like a cow. Looking at those corpses, he couldn't help but shiver and his legs were trembling. If it were not for the people beside him holding him up, he would have fallen to the ground. Jiang Pingji cupped her hands and replied, Yesterday I was accidentally kidnapped by thieves. After thinking hard, I found a solution. I secretly stirred up their internal strife and took the opportunity to kill them one by one. That's how I was able to protect the noble lady's reputation. The Hejian prefecture chief was in disbelief when he heard that Jiang Pingji had killed the bandits. Then he felt goosebumps all over his body. The prefecture chief's eyebrows were so tightly knitted that they could kill a fly. He called Jiang Pingji over and asked, Come forward and tell me what happened. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.